3 knocks at midnight, a billionaire at his door, a secret that could ruin them both. When 32-year-old single dad Ethan Hayes opened his apartment door on Christmas Eve, the last person he expected to see was Sienna Vale, his boss's boss, the youngest female CEO in the city, standing in a $1,000 gown with mascara running down her face. She wasn't supposed to know where he lived. She wasn't supposed to be terrified. And she definitely wasn't supposed to be looking at him like he was the only person left in the world she could trust. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this tale travels. The apartment was too quiet. Ethan Hayes sat on the edge of his couch, staring at the Christmas tree he'd put up 3 days ago. It leaned slightly to the left. He'd noticed that the first night but never bothered fixing it. The lights blinked in no particular pattern, cheap bulbs from the drugstore downtown that he'd bought on sale 2 years running. Beneath the tree sat 3 wrapped presents, each one labeled in his careful handwriting. To Connor, love Dad. His son wouldn't be home until tomorrow afternoon, Christmas Day. Lisa's parents had him for the week, their annual arrangement that Ethan had agreed to because he knew Connor deserved grandparents who spoiled him rotten, who didn't live in a 1-bedroom apartment where the heat only worked when it felt like it. He checked his phone. 12:07 a.m. Officially, Christmas Eve had crossed into Christmas Day, which meant he'd officially spent another holiday alone. 3 years. It had been 3 years since Lisa died, and Ethan still couldn't quite figure out how to fill the spaces she'd left behind. Not the physical spaces. Those he'd handled with ruthless efficiency. Her clothes donated within a month. Her toiletries cleared from the bathroom. Her coffee mug, the one with the chipped handle that she'd refused to throw away, packed into a box in the closet that Connor might want someday. But the other spaces, the ones that opened up at night when there was no one to talk to about whether Connor's teacher was being too hard on him or whether the weird noise the refrigerator made meant they were headed for an expensive repair. Those spaces he hadn't figured out how to fill at all. Ethan stood up, stretched, felt his lower back crack in the way it had started doing sometime in the last year. 32 wasn't supposed to feel old, but exhaustion had a way of adding years you couldn't see in the mirror. He was halfway to the kitchen, thinking vaguely about whether he had any beer left in the fridge, when he heard it. 3 sharp knocks. Not the friendly tap of a neighbor. Not the rhythmic knock of someone delivering a package. 3 urgent, demanding strikes against his door that made his stomach tighten instinctively. Ethan froze. It was past midnight on Christmas Eve. Nobody knocked on doors past midnight on Christmas Eve unless something was wrong. He moved toward the door, each step careful, and looked through the peephole. What he saw made no sense. A woman stood in the hallway, but the fisheye distortion of the peephole made it hard to see details. Dark hair, bare shoulders despite the cold. She turned her head, glancing down the hallway like she expected someone to appear, and that's when Ethan caught the profile that made his breath stop. He knew that face. Everyone who worked at Vale Industries knew that face. Sienna Vale, CEO, Billionaire. The woman whose signature appeared on company-wide emails but who Ethan had only seen in person twice, both times from across a conference room during quarterly meetings where he sat in the back row with the other mid-level project managers. She knocked again, harder this time, and he heard her voice through the door. "Please, I know you're in there." Ethan's hand was on the deadbolt before his brain caught up. He stopped himself, pulse hammering. This had to be a mistake. A case of wrong apartment, wrong floor, wrong building entirely. Sienna Vale didn't show up at employee apartments at midnight. Sienna Vale didn't show up anywhere that wasn't carefully scheduled and security vetted. And Ethan Hayes... Her voice came again, lower now, almost a whisper. "I'm sorry to do this. I didn't know where else to go." She knew his name. He unlocked the door and pulled it open. The woman standing in his doorway looked nothing like the poised executive from the quarterly meetings. Her black evening gown, something that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly rent, was wrinkled across the front like she'd been gripping the fabric. Her hair, usually styled in the kind of sleek professional waves that suggested a team of people, hung loose and tangled around her shoulders. And her face. Her makeup was smudged, dark streaks beneath her eyes where mascara had run and been hastily wiped away. But it was her expression that hit him hardest. The raw, undisguised fear. "Ms. Vale?" It came out uncertain, like he was still waiting for someone to jump out and tell him this was an elaborate prank. Can I come in? She glanced over her shoulder again, that same nervous check of the hallway. Please. Ethan stepped back without thinking. She moved past him quickly, and he caught the scent of expensive perfume mixed with cold night air and something else. Sweat, he realized. The kind that came from adrenaline, not exertion. He closed the door, locked it, and turned to find her standing in the center of his tiny living room, looking completely out of place beneath his crooked Christmas tree and year-old IKEA furniture. I'm sorry, she said again. Her arms were wrapped around herself, hands gripping her elbows. I know this is insane. I know you must think I'm... She stopped, shook her head. I didn't know where else to go. Are you okay? It was a stupid question. She obviously wasn't okay. No. She laughed, a short, brittle sound. No, I'm really not. Ethan's mind raced through possibilities. Medical emergency, car accident, some kind of corporate crisis that required what exactly? His help? He was a project manager in commercial development. He filed reports and attended meetings and tried to keep construction timelines from going completely off the rails. Do you need me to call someone? He asked. Ambulance? Police? No, God, no, not the police. She pressed her fingers to her temples. I'm sorry, I'm not explaining this well. Can I sit? Yeah, of course. He gestured toward the couch, and she sank onto it like her legs had been barely holding her up. Ethan remained standing, keeping a careful distance. Whatever was happening, it was big enough to bring a billionaire CEO to his apartment at midnight. And he had the distinct feeling that getting involved was going to complicate his life in ways he couldn't predict. But she was sitting on his couch with her shoulders shaking, and he'd spent the last 3 years learning that sometimes you helped people simply because they needed help. Can I get you something? He asked. Water? I think I have tea somewhere. Water would be good. He went to the kitchen, 5 steps from the living room in an apartment this size, and filled a glass from the tap. When he came back, she'd pulled off her heels and tucked her feet beneath her on the couch. The gesture made her look smaller somehow, more human. She took the glass with both hands and drank half of it in one go. Thank you, she said quietly. Ethan sat down in this armchair across from her, maintaining that careful distance. Do you want to tell me what happened? Sienna set the glass on the coffee table, and he noticed her hands were trembling. She noticed too, pulled them back into her lap and gripped them together. I was at the Winters Gala tonight, she said. The annual Christmas thing at the Rothmore Hotel. 500 people, open bar, silent auction. You know the kind. Ethan didn't, but he nodded anyway. I left around 11:30. My driver was supposed to pick me up, but there was some mix-up with the scheduling, so I decided to drive myself. She paused. I have a car at the hotel garage. I don't drive it often, but it was there and I just wanted to go home. Okay. I made it about 3 blocks before I noticed the other car. The way she said it made the hair on the back of Ethan's neck stand up. It was black, she continued. A sedan. Nothing distinctive about it, which was almost the point. It stayed 2 cars behind me at first, but when I turned onto 5th, it turned 2. When I took the bridge route instead of the tunnel, it followed. Could have been a coincidence, Ethan said, even though he didn't believe it. That's what I told myself. Her voice was steady now, like she'd shifted into some kind of crisis management mode. But then I tested it. I took 4 random turns. Left on Maple, right on Carson, another right onto Bellevue, then back around onto Carson going the other direction. The sedan followed every single one. Jesus. I tried to get the license plate, but the angle was wrong and the snow made it hard to see. She rubbed her arms, suddenly cold despite the apartment's stuffy heat. I thought about driving to a police station, but what was I going to tell them? That someone was driving on the same public roads as me? They were following you. Maybe. Probably. She met his eyes. I've been getting messages for the past 2 months. Anonymous. Untraceable, according to our security team. Nothing explicitly threatening, but the tone... She stopped. They know things about my schedule. Where I'm going to be and when. Ethan felt something cold settle in his stomach. Have you told the police about those? Our legal team has a file. So does private security. But there's nothing actionable. No direct threats. Just someone who wants me to know they're watching. That's a threat. Tell that to the lawyers. Bitterness crept into her voice. Apparently, I know you were at Café Noir on Tuesday at 2:15 doesn't meet the threshold for a restraining order. Ethan processed this. Sienna Vale, one of the most powerful executives in the city, was being stalked and couldn't get help because the stalker was smart enough to stay just inside the boundaries of legal. So tonight, he said slowly, when you saw the car following you, I panicked. She said it simply, without embarrassment. I drove around for 40 minutes trying to lose them, but they stayed with me the whole time. Eventually, I ended up in this neighborhood, and I remembered. She hesitated. We have an employee directory, internal system, lists home addresses for emergency contact purposes. Understanding clicked into place. You looked up my address. I remembered your name from a meeting last month. You presented the Harper Plaza timeline. She offered a small, exhausted smile. You were one of the only people in that room who didn't bullshit when asked about delays. I appreciated that. Ethan had no memory of Sienna Vale being in that meeting, but apparently she'd noticed him, filed his name away, looked up his address when she needed somewhere to run. The car, he said. Did it follow you here? I don't know. I took the parking garage entrance, went up 3 levels, then came back down and exited on the opposite side. I didn't see it after that, but I wasn't exactly thinking clearly. She looked around the apartment, seeming to really see it for the first time. I'm sorry, this is completely inappropriate. You have every right to ask me to leave. I'm not going to do that. You don't owe me anything. I know we're not. She gestured vaguely. We don't know each other. I'm your boss's boss's boss, and I just showed up at your home in the middle of the night like some kind of... You're scared, Ethan interrupted. And you needed somewhere safe. That's enough. Sienna stared at him. Something shifted in her expression, a crack in whatever armor she'd been wearing. I don't feel safe anywhere anymore, she said quietly. Not at work. Not at home. Definitely not in public. Do you know what it's like to walk into a room and wonder which person there wants to hurt you? No, Ethan admitted. I don't. It's exhausting. She leaned back against the couch, closing her eyes. And I can't tell anyone because the moment I show weakness, the board starts questioning whether I can handle the position. A 30-year-old woman running a company that size? There are people waiting for me to fail. Ethan had worked at Vale Industries for 6 years. He'd seen 3 CEOs come and go in that time, each one a middle-aged man in an expensive suit who lasted about 18 months before moving on to a better offer. Then Sienna Vale had taken over 2 years ago, and suddenly the company was profitable again. Projects that had been stalled for years started moving. The quarterly meetings stopped feeling like funerals. You're good at your job, he said. She opened her eyes. How would you know? Because the Harper Plaza project was dead before you came in. The previous CEO had decided it was too expensive and wanted to scrap it. You looked at the numbers and realized the only problem was the contractor was overbilling by 30%. You remember that? You saved 40 jobs with that decision, mine included. He shrugged. So yeah, I remember. Sienna was quiet for a moment. Then, thank you. They sat in silence. The Christmas tree lights continued their irregular blinking. Somewhere in the building, someone's TV was playing too loud, the muffled sound of canned laughter bleeding through the walls. Is your family here? Sienna asked, glancing toward the presents under the tree. My son. He's with his grandparents tonight. Comes back tomorrow. And you're... She stopped, clearly unsure how to phrase it. My wife died 3 years ago. Cancer. Ethan said it the way he always did now, flat and factual. The grief was still there, but it had worn smooth with repetition. It's just me and Connor. I'm sorry. It's okay. Well, it's not, but... He rubbed the back of his neck. You know what I mean. Yeah. She looked down at her hands. I know exactly what you mean. Something in her tone made him pay attention. You lost someone too? My father, 4 years ago. Heart attack on a Tuesday morning at his desk. She smiled without humor. He built Vale Industries from nothing, spent 40 years turning it into what it is today, and then he was just gone. I inherited everything, the company, the money, the penthouse, the expectations. She paused. And the loneliness. Ethan understood that last part more than he wanted to. Do you have any siblings? He asked. No, just me. My mother died when I was 12, so it was always just Dad and me. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. After he died, I thought keeping the company going would help. You know, honor his legacy, make him proud. And maybe it does, but it doesn't make the penthouse feel less empty at night. The vulnerability in her voice was striking. This wasn't the polished CEO from the quarterly meetings. This was just a woman who'd spent too many nights alone in a too big apartment, wondering if anyone actually cared about her beyond what she could do for them. For what it's worth, Ethan said, I think you're doing a hell of a job, not just with the company, with all of it. You don't know me well enough to make that assessment. Maybe not. But you came to my door tonight instead of going home to your empty penthouse, and that tells me you're smart enough to know when to ask for help. That's something. Sienna's eyes were bright with unshed tears. She blinked them back, straightening her shoulders in a gesture that Ethan recognized. The physical act of pulling yourself together when falling apart wasn't an option. Can I ask you something? She said. Sure. Why aren't you freaking out right now? Your boss's boss shows up at your apartment at midnight with some paranoid story about being followed, and you're just, she gestured at him, calm, like this happens all the time. Ethan thought about it. I spent 2 years watching my wife fight cancer, sat in hospital rooms at 3 a.m. while she couldn't sleep because the pain meds made her feel like the walls were breathing, held her hand during treatments that made her so sick she couldn't stand. He met Sienna's gaze. After that, nothing really freaks me out anymore. Someone shows up scared and needing help, that I understand. I'm sorry, Sienna said softly. About your wife. About all of it. Me too. He paused. But I learned something from it. The people who show up matter more than the people who promise to. And you showed up at my door tonight, which means somewhere in that brilliant, terrified brain of yours, you thought I might help, so I'm going to. You don't have to. I know. I'm doing it anyway. She stared at him for a long moment, and Ethan wondered what she saw. Probably not much. A guy in his 30s with permanent exhaustion in his eyes, wearing sweatpants and a faded college t-shirt, living in an apartment that had seen better decades. But whatever she saw made her relax slightly, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. Thank you, she said. Really? Do you want more water, or I could make coffee? Fair warning, it's not good coffee. A small smile crossed her face. Bad coffee sounds perfect, actually. Ethan got up and headed to the kitchen. His coffee maker was a $12 model from Target that Connor had spilled juice on 2 months ago, leaving a permanent sticky spot on the side. He measured out the grounds, generic brand, bought in bulk, and filled the reservoir with tap water. While the machine gurgled to life, he glanced back at Sienna. She'd pulled out her phone and was scrolling through something, her face bathed in the blue glow of the screen. Even exhausted and scared, she looked like she belonged in a different world than his. The kind of world where Christmas galas happened in ballrooms and cars came with drivers and people didn't have to worry about whether the heat would work through January. But she'd chosen his door, his couch, his shitty coffee. That had to mean something. The coffee finished brewing. Ethan poured 2 mugs, mismatched, one from a 5K run Lisa had done in 2015, the other with a faded logo from some corporate event, and brought them to the living room. Sienna accepted hers with both hands, wrapping her fingers around the ceramic like she was trying to absorb its warmth. So what happens now? Ethan asked, settling back into the armchair. I don't know. She took a sip, made a face that suggested the coffee was indeed as bad as advertised, but drank more anyway. I can't go home. Not tonight. Not when I don't know if... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. You can stay here, Ethan said. Sienna looked up sharply. I can't ask you to... You're not asking. I'm offering. He gestured around the apartment. It's not much, but it's safe. Nobody knows you're here, except me. And I promise I'm not going to... He paused, trying to figure out how to phrase it. You can trust me. That's all I'm saying. She studied him, and Ethan had the distinct impression of being assessed with the same sharp intelligence she probably used in boardroom negotiations. Okay, she said finally, just for tonight. Just for tonight, he agreed. They drank their coffee in silence. The building settled around them with the small sounds of people living their lives. Footsteps overhead, water running through pipes, the hum of someone's refrigerator through the shared wall. Can I ask what you were going to do tomorrow? Sienna said. Before I showed up and complicated everything. Pick up my son around 2. We were going to make dinner together. Connor wants to try making lasagna from scratch because he saw it on some cooking show. Ethan smiled. It's going to be a disaster, but he's excited about it. That sounds nice. You're welcome to stay, if you want. The words came out before he could think better of them. I mean, if you're still here, which you probably won't be, but the offer stands. Sienna's expression softened. I appreciate that, but I should probably get back to reality at some point. Reality's overrated. She laughed, a genuine sound this time. Says the man who makes lasagna with his son on Christmas Day. Fair point. Ethan finished his coffee. You must have family somewhere. People who are expecting you tomorrow. No, not really. She set her mug on the coffee table. There's an executive team dinner tomorrow night, but that's work, not family. And before you ask, yes, I know how depressing that sounds. I wasn't going to say that, but you were thinking it. Actually, I was thinking that we're not that different, you and me. Sienna raised an eyebrow. I'm a billionaire CEO. You're a project manager living in a one-bedroom apartment. We're very different. And yet we're both sitting here at 1 a.m. drinking bad coffee because we've got nobody else to be with. Ethan shrugged. Money doesn't fix loneliness, trust me. I've spent enough time wishing it did. She didn't have an answer for that. The silence stretched between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that happened when two people recognize something familiar in each other. The specific weight of loss, the learned skill of carrying on alone, the strange relief of finding someone who understood without needing every detail explained. I should let you sleep, Sienna said eventually. You've been incredibly kind, and I've kept you up long enough. I wasn't sleeping anyway. Christmas insomnia? Something like that. Ethan stood up, collected both mugs. The couch pulls out into a bed. It's not great, but it's better than nothing. I'll get you some blankets. Ethan, you don't have to. I know. I'm doing it anyway. He went to the closet and pulled out the spare bedding, sheets that didn't quite match, a comforter Connor had rejected because it didn't have superheroes on it. When he came back, Sienna was standing by the window, looking out at the snowy street below. See anything? He asked. No, just snow and empty cars. She turned. I'm probably being paranoid. For all I know, that sedan was just someone going the same direction as me. Or you're right, and someone was following you, and you made the smart choice coming here instead of leading them home. She considered this. You really believe me about all of it? Why wouldn't I? Because it sounds crazy. Powerful CEO thinks someone's stalking her, can't prove it, shows up at a random employee's apartment in the middle of the night. She shook her head. That's not a story people believe. That's a story people question. I'm not people, Ethan said simply, and you're not crazy. Something in her face shifted. Relief, maybe. Or gratitude. Or just the simple recognition of being believed when you'd expected doubt. Thank you, she whispered. He handed her the bedding. Bathroom's down the hall. There's a spare toothbrush under the sink. Connor keeps losing his, so I buy them in bulk. Towels are in the cabinet. Help yourself to whatever you need. This is more than I could have hoped for when I knocked on your door. Yeah, well, Ethan managed a tired smile. Merry Christmas. She smiled back, and for just a moment she looked less like a billionaire CEO and more like just Sienna, a woman who'd had a terrible night and found unexpected kindness on the other side of it. Merry Christmas, Ethan. He left her to make up the pull-out couch and retreated to his bedroom. The door didn't quite close all the way. The frame had warped last summer, and he'd never gotten around to fixing it, so he could hear the sounds of her moving around the living room, the scrape of the couch being pulled out, the rustle of sheets, the creak of springs as she settled in. Ethan lay on his own bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to process everything that had happened in the last hour. Tomorrow, Connor would come home and life would return to normal. Sienna would go back to being the untouchable CEO, and he would go back to being employee number whatever it was on the org chart. But tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight, someone had needed help, and he'd given it. Simple as that. He closed his eyes and listened to the building settle around him, and for the first time in a long time, his apartment didn't feel quite so empty. Ethan woke to the sound of his phone buzzing on the nightstand. He fumbled for it, in the pre-dawn darkness, squinting at the screen. 6:47 a.m. A text from Lisa's mother. Connor's so excited for today. We'll have him ready by 2. Drive safe in the snow. He typed back a quick response, then lay there for a moment, listening. The apartment was silent except for the familiar sounds. The radiator clanking to life, Mrs. Chen's television through the wall, the distant rumble of traffic on the street below. Then he remembered. Sienna. Ethan sat up, running a hand through his hair. For half a second, he wondered if the whole thing had been some kind of exhaustion-induced hallucination. But no. He could hear it now. The quiet sound of someone breathing in the living room, the subtle shift of weight on the pull-out couch. She was still here. He got up carefully, pulled on jeans and a clean shirt, and eased his bedroom door open. The living room was dim, early morning light filtering through the blinds in pale strips. Sienna was asleep on the pull-out bed, curled on her side with the comforter pulled up to her shoulders. Her hair had dried in messy waves across the pillow, and without makeup she looked younger than 30, vulnerable in a way that probably would have horrified her if she'd known he was watching. Ethan moved quietly to the kitchen and started the coffee maker. While it brewed, he checked his phone again. No missed calls, no emergency alerts, nothing to suggest that anyone had noticed Sienna Vale was missing from wherever she was supposed to be. He was pouring his first cup when he heard movement behind him. "Morning!" Sienna's voice was rough with sleep. He turned. She'd gotten up and was standing in the doorway wearing yesterday's evening gown, which looked even more absurd in the morning light. The fabric was creased, the hem dirty from where it had dragged on his floor. "Morning," he said. "Coffee?" "Please." He poured a second cup and handed it to her. She took it with both hands again, that same gesture from last night, and took a long drink before seeming to care that it was still too hot. "What time is it?" she asked. "Almost 7. I should go." But she didn't move. Just stood there in his kitchen doorway, looking lost. "You should eat first," Ethan said. "I don't have much, but I can make eggs. Toast. You don't have to keep feeding me." "I know." He opened the refrigerator. "But I'm making some anyway, so you might as well eat." Sienna was quiet for a moment, then scrambled, if that's okay. Scrambled works. He pulled out eggs, butter, the last 2 slices of bread. Sienna watched him work, leaning against the doorframe with her coffee, and the silence between them wasn't awkward so much as careful, like they were both figuring out how to exist in the same space now that fear and adrenaline weren't carrying the conversation. "Did you sleep?" Ethan asked, cracking eggs into a bowl. "A little. Better than I expected." She paused. "Your couch is surprisingly comfortable. Connor picked it out. He said it had to be good for watching movies on." Ethan whisked the eggs, added a splash of milk. Turns out 6-year-olds have strong opinions about furniture. "How old is he now?" 7. Just turned last month. "And he lives with you full-time?" "Yeah, Lisa's parents take him some weekends, holidays, but mostly it's just us." He poured the eggs into the heated pan, stirred them gently. "I'm not great at the whole work-life balance thing, but I try." "I saw your performance reviews," Sienna said. Ethan glanced back at her. "You read my performance reviews?" "I read everyone's reviews, all 843 employees." She took another sip of coffee. "Yours always mentioned that you leave exactly at 5:30. No staying late, no weekend work. Some of your previous managers flagged it as a concern. Let me guess, lack of commitment to the company." "Something like that." She set her mug on the counter. "I disagreed. You get more done in 40 hours than most people do in 60, and you've never missed a deadline." Ethan scraped the eggs onto 2 plates, added the toast. "So I'm not getting fired for having a life outside work?" "You're not getting fired at all." Sienna accepted the plate he handed her. "The managers who complained about your hours were the same ones consistently behind schedule on their own projects. I've learned to ignore people who mistake FaceTime for productivity." They sat at the small table by the window, barely big enough for 2 people, something Ethan had bought at a yard sale 3 years ago and kept meaning to replace. Sienna ate quickly, like someone who'd skipped dinner and forgotten about it until food was in front of her. "This is good," she said. "It's just eggs." "I know, but they're good eggs." She smiled slightly. "I can't remember the last time someone made me breakfast." "What do you usually eat?" "Whatever my assistant orders. Protein smoothie usually. Sometimes oatmeal from the place on the ground floor of my building." She pushed eggs around her plate. "It's efficient." "Sounds depressing." "It is." She looked up at him. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Last night, when I told you about the car following me, you believed me immediately. No questions, no doubt. Why?" Ethan thought about it while he chewed his toast. Because you had no reason to lie. And because I've learned that when someone's scared, they're usually scared for a reason. Most people would have asked for proof. I'm not most people. No, Sienna said quietly. You're really not. They finished eating in silence. Outside, the snow had stopped, leaving the street covered in white that would turn to gray slush by afternoon. A few people were already out, scraping ice off windshields, walking dogs that didn't care about the cold. I should call my security team, Sienna said, setting down her fork. Let them know where I am. They're probably losing their minds. Probably. She pulled out her phone, hesitated. This is going to be awkward. Want me to step out? No, it's fine. She dialed, put the phone to her ear. After 2 rings, Marcus, it's me. Even from across the table, Ethan could hear the explosion of noise from the other end. Sienna held the phone slightly away from her ear, waiting for the tirade to run down. I'm safe, she said when there was a break. She glanced at Ethan. I'm at a friend's place. More noise from Marcus. More noise from, yes, I know I should have called sooner. Yes, I know you've had people looking for me since midnight. I'm sorry. She rubbed her forehead. I'll explain everything when I see you, but right now I need you to do something for me. She stood up, walked to the window. I need you to check the security footage from the Rothmore parking garage. Last night, between 11:30 and midnight, there was a black sedan, older model, following my car. I need the plate number and anything else you can pull. A pause. I'm sure it was following me, Marcus. 4 turns, same car every time. Her voice had shifted into CEO mode, crisp and authoritative. Just check the footage, and I want a review of everyone who had access to my schedule for last night. The gala wasn't public information. More conversation that Ethan couldn't quite hear. No, I don't want a police escort. I want information. She turned from the window. I'll be at the office tomorrow morning. We'll talk then. She ended the call and stood there for a moment, staring at her phone. Everything okay? Ethan asked. He's upset. Wants me to come in right now, have the whole security team do a threat assessment. She sat back down. I told him tomorrow. Why tomorrow? Because today is Christmas, and I'm tired of letting fear run my life. She met his eyes. And because I'm not ready to leave yet. The admission hung between them. Ethan wasn't sure what to say to that, so he said nothing. I should go back to my place soon, Sienna continued. Change clothes, check in with the board, pretend everything's normal, but not yet. You can stay as long as you want. Your son's coming home this afternoon. At 2, that gives us... He checked his phone. 7 hours. 7 hours. She smiled. What do people do on Christmas morning in apartments like this? Honestly, I usually clean, do laundry, avoid thinking about how I'm spending another holiday alone. Ethan stood, collected their plates. Not exactly festive. Sounds better than what I had planned. Which was? Lying in my penthouse, scrolling through work emails, wondering if the person sending me anonymous messages was going to escalate from watching to doing something worse. She said it matter-of-factly, but Ethan heard the fear underneath. He turned from the sink. Have the messages gotten worse recently? The last one came 3 days ago, Wednesday night, around 10 p.m. She pulled out her phone, scrolled through something. It said, red dress, gold earrings, café noir, table by the window. You look nervous. Which I was, because I'd just gotten their previous message an hour before. What did that one say? Soon. She looked up. Just that. One word. Jesus, Sienna. I know. She set her phone down. Marcus wants me to stay off social media, vary my routine, never go anywhere alone. Which would be fine, except my entire life is public. Board meetings, investor calls, company events. I can't just disappear. Have you considered taking a break? Time off? And let them win? Something fierce flashed in her eyes. Whoever's doing this wants me scared, wants me weak. The moment I start hiding, they've already won. That's not weakness. That's self-preservation. In my world, they're the same thing. She stood up, walked to the Christmas tree. I became CEO at 28. 28. Do you know how many people thought I couldn't handle it? How many board members voted against me? How many executives quit rather than work for someone young enough to be their daughter? I can imagine. I spent 2 years proving them wrong. 2 years of 18-hour days of making decisions that kept thousands of people employed. of turning Vale Industries from a company circling the drain into something profitable again. She touched one of the ornaments, a handmade paper snowflake that Connor had made in school. And now someone wants to take all of that away because they think they can scare me into quitting. You don't know that's what they want. What else would they want? She turned to face him. I don't have a personal life to threaten. No spouse, no kids, no close friends outside the office. The company is all I have. So if someone wants to hurt me, that's where they'll aim. Ethan thought about what she'd said last night, about inheriting everything after her father died. The company, the money, the penthouse, the expectations, and the loneliness. When was the last time you did something that wasn't work-related? He asked. What do you mean? I mean something just for you. Not a business dinner or a networking event. Something that had nothing to do with Vale Industries. Sienna considered this. I went to a yoga class 3 months ago. And I spent the entire hour thinking about the quarterly projections and left early to take a conference call. That doesn't count. Then I don't know. She sank onto the couch, looking suddenly exhausted. I don't remember the last time I did something that wasn't about the company. Ethan sat down in the armchair across from her. Can I tell you something? Okay. After Lisa died, I threw myself into work, took every extra shift they offered, volunteered for projects nobody wanted, stayed late whenever Connor was at his grandparents'. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I told myself I was being responsible, providing for my son, securing our future, all that. But really, I was just avoiding the fact that going home meant facing an empty apartment and memories I didn't know how to deal with. What changed? Connor's teacher called me in for a meeting, said he'd been acting out, getting into fights at recess. I was shocked because Connor's the sweetest kid, never causes trouble. Ethan paused. Turns out he was telling the other kids that his dad was too busy to play with him, that I was always working or tired or stressed, and he was right. Sienna was watching him carefully. So I made a rule, Ethan continued. Leave at 5:30 every day, no exceptions. Weekends are for Connor, not the office. And yeah, it cost me. I've been passed over for promotions, had managers complain about my commitment, missed out on projects that could have advanced my career. But you know what? Connor stopped fighting at school, started smiling more. And I started remembering that I'm a person, not just an employee. You think I need to make rules like that? I think you need to remember that you're a person too, not just a CEO, not just your father's legacy. He met her eyes. You're Sienna, and Sienna deserves to have a life outside that office. She was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was soft. I don't know how to do that anymore. Be a person, I mean. It's been so long since anyone saw me as anything other than the CEO. I see you. You don't know me. Maybe not. But I know you showed up at my door scared and alone, and that's real. I know you're exhausted from carrying more weight than anyone should have to carry alone, and that's real. He leaned back. The rest is just details. Sienna's eyes were bright again, the same look from last night. How are you so calm about all of this? I'm not calm. I'm just used to dealing with things I can't control. He shrugged. Cancer doesn't care about your plans. Grief doesn't follow a schedule. You learn to adapt. I'm sorry you had to learn that. Me too. But it taught me something important. He paused. The things that matter most are the things you can't put on a schedule or quantify in a report. They're the messy human stuff. The conversations at 1 a.m., the bad coffee and scrambled eggs, the fact that someone showed up when they needed help and found it. Is that what this is? Sienna asked quietly. Help? I don't know what this is, but I know I'm glad you're here. She smiled, a real one this time that reached her eyes. I'm glad I'm here too. They sat in comfortable silence. The building was waking up around them, doors opening and closing, footsteps in the hallway, the sound of someone's radio playing Christmas music. Can I ask you something? Sienna said. Sure. What was she like? Your wife. Ethan wasn't expecting that. Most people avoided the topic, uncomfortable with grief they didn't know how to handle. Lisa was... He stopped, trying to find the right words. She was good. Just genuinely good in a way that seemed impossible. She worked at a nonprofit helping homeless families find housing, and she actually cared about every single person who came through, remembered their names, their kids' birthdays, everything. She sounds amazing. She was. She was also stubborn as hell, terrible at cooking, and had this laugh that was way too loud for her tiny body. He smiled at the memory. Connor has her laugh. Every time I hear it, I hear her. Do you miss her? Every day. But it's different now. Less like drowning, more like, I don't know, an ache that's just part of me. He looked at Sienna. Does that make sense? Yeah, it does. She was quiet for a moment. My dad used to say that the hardest part about losing someone isn't the big moments. It's the small ones. The morning coffee where you'd usually talk about the day ahead. The stupid jokes you'd share. The comfortable silence. He was right. I think about that a lot. All the conversations we'll never have. All the advice he'll never give me about running the company. She twisted her hands together. Sometimes I make decisions and wonder what he would think, if he'd be proud or disappointed. I bet he'd be proud. How would you know? Because you're still fighting, still showing up every day even when it's hard. That takes strength. Ethan paused. And because you're human enough to be scared but brave enough to keep going anyway. Sienna looked away, blinking rapidly. When she spoke again, her voice was unsteady. I'm not brave. I'm terrified all the time. Bravery isn't not being scared. It's being scared and doing it anyway. That sounds like something from a motivational poster. Probably. Doesn't make it less true. She laughed, a wet sound that turned into something like a sob. Ethan watched her try to hold it together, saw the exact moment when she couldn't anymore. Her face crumpled, and the tears came fast and hard. He moved without thinking, crossing to the couch and sitting beside her. She turned into him instinctively, and he put his arms around her while she cried into his shoulder. Her whole body shook with it, 3 years of pressure and fear and loneliness pouring out all at once. Ethan didn't try to stop her or tell her it was okay. He just held her, the way he'd held Connor through nightmares and tantrums and the terrible grief of losing his mother. Some things you couldn't fix with words. You just had to be there. Eventually, the sobs turned to hiccups, then to shaky breathing. Sienna pulled back, wiping her face with her hands. I'm sorry, she said. I don't do that. It's okay. I got mascara all over your shirt. He looked down. Sure enough, there were dark smudges on his shoulder. It'll wash out. I'm a mess, she laughed, the sound still shaky. Literally and figuratively. You're human, there's a difference. She looked at him, and something in her expression shifted. Why are you being so nice to me? Because you need someone to be nice to you, and because... He hesitated, then decided honesty was simpler. Because I know what it's like to feel completely alone in a room full of people, and I wouldn't wish that on anyone. I feel like that all the time, Sienna whispered. Board meetings, investor calls, company parties. I'm surrounded by people, and I've never felt more isolated. That's the worst kind of loneliness. Yeah. She took a shaky breath. Thank you. For this. For all of it. You don't have to thank me. I do, though. You didn't have to let me in last night. You didn't have to believe me or feed me or... She gestured vaguely. Any of this. But you did. What else was I going to do? Most people would have called building security or told me to handle it myself. She twisted the fabric of her dress. I'm your boss's boss's boss. This could have been a setup, a test, anything, but you just helped. It wasn't a test. You were scared. End of story. Sienna studied him for a long moment. You're a good person, Ethan Hayes. I'm just a person. The good part is debatable. Not from where I'm sitting. The moment stretched between them, heavy with something Ethan couldn't quite name. Then Sienna's phone buzzed, shattering it. She pulled it out, glanced at the screen. My assistant, she said, wants to know if I'm coming to the executive dinner tonight. Are you? I should. It's expected. She set the phone down without responding. But I don't want to. Then don't. It's not that simple. Why not? Because... She stopped. I don't know, because that's what I do. Show up, smile, pretend everything's perfect even when it's falling apart. Sounds exhausting. It is. She leaned back against the couch. You know what I want to do tonight? What? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. No dinner, no networking, no pretending to care about quarterly projections and market trends. She looked at him. I want to sit somewhere quiet and eat bad takeout and not think about work for 5 consecutive minutes. That can be arranged. I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering. Ethan checked his phone. Connor gets back at 2. We make lasagna, badly, probably, and then we watch whatever movie he picks. You're welcome to join if you want. You're inviting me to spend Christmas with you and your son. Yeah. We barely know each other. We know enough. He shrugged. Besides, Connor loves meeting new people, and he'll be thrilled to have an excuse to explain his entire Pokemon collection to someone who hasn't heard it 50 times. Sienna smiled despite herself. I don't know anything about Pokemon. Perfect. He loves an uninformed audience. She was quiet, turning it over. What would I tell my team? They're expecting me at that dinner. Tell them the truth, that you're spending Christmas somewhere else. They'll ask questions. Let them. Ethan met her eyes. You're the CEO. You're allowed to have a life outside work. Am I? Yeah, you are. Sienna took a deep breath, then picked up her phone. She typed out a message, hit send before she could second-guess herself. Done, she said. I just canceled on the executive dinner. How do you feel? Terrified, relieved, like I just jumped off a cliff. She laughed nervously. Is this what normal people feel like when they make social plans? Pretty much. It's horrible. It gets easier. Her phone immediately started buzzing with responses. She silenced it without looking. They're going to think I've lost my mind, she said. Maybe you needed to. Maybe. She set the phone face down on the coffee table. So what happens now between now and 2 o'clock? Whatever you want. She thought about it. Can we just talk? Like we did last night? Yeah, we can do that. So they did. They talked about everything and nothing. Connor's obsession with dinosaurs that had evolved into Pokemon. Sienna's failed attempt to learn piano as a kid. The weird neighbors they'd both had at various points. Small things, human things. The kind of conversation that had no agenda beyond existing in the same space. At some point, Ethan made more coffee. At another, Sienna borrowed a sweatshirt because she was tired of the evening gown, and it was the only thing he had that would fit. She looked ridiculous in it, the fabric swallowing her small frame, but she looked more comfortable than she had all morning. I should probably call Marcus back, she said eventually. Let him know I'm actually okay and not being held hostage. Am I holding you hostage? The most pleasant hostage situation in history. She smiled. But I should check in, make sure they found something on that car. Use the bedroom if you want privacy. Thanks. She disappeared down the hall, and Ethan heard the murmur of her voice through the door. He cleaned up the breakfast dishes, wiped down the counter, tried not to think too hard about the fact that Sienna Vale was in his apartment wearing his sweatshirt on Christmas morning. When she emerged 10 minutes later, her expression was grim. They found the car, she said. Ethan set down the dish towel. And? Stolen plates. No registration match in the system. Marcus is checking traffic cameras to see if they can track where it went after I lost it, but she shook her head. Whoever's doing this knows what they're doing. Did you tell him where you are? I said I was with a friend. He didn't push. She sat back down at the table. He did say the board's been asking about me. Apparently I missed some calls last night. About what? A potential acquisition. Something that came up last minute. She rubbed her temples. It's always something. You don't have to deal with it right now. I know, but ignoring it won't make it go away. No, but it might make today a little easier. She looked at him, and some of the tension left her shoulders. You're right. It can wait until tomorrow. Everything can wait until tomorrow. That's a dangerous philosophy for a CEO. Good thing you're not being a CEO today, you're just being Sienna. Just Sienna, she repeated softly. I'm not sure I remember how to do that. You're doing fine so far. They fell back into conversation, easier now that the morning's emotional storm had passed. Sienna asked about Connor, what he was like, what he wanted to be when he grew up, whether he remembered his mother. Ethan answered honestly, the way he always did when people asked about Lisa. Yes, Connor remembered her. Not everything, but enough. The important parts. Does he ask about her? Sienna asked. Sienna. Sometimes. Usually when something reminds him, a song she used to sing, or when he sees other kids with their moms. Ethan paused. I try to keep her memory alive without making it hurt. Not sure if I'm doing it right, but I'm trying. I think that's all anyone can do. The morning drifted past. At some point, Sienna's phone rang again, and again she ignored it. Ethan didn't comment. If she wanted to disconnect from her life for a few hours, that was her choice. Around 11, she stood up and stretched. I should probably go home soon. Change clothes before your son gets here. I don't think showing up in last night's gown is going to make a great first impression. He's 7. He won't notice. I'll notice. She looked down at herself. His oversized sweatshirt, her wrinkled dress beneath it, her bare feet on his floor. Though I have to admit, this is the most comfortable I've been in months. You can take the sweatshirt if you want. I couldn't. It's old. Connor spilled juice on it last year, and the stain never really came out. He pointed to a faint purple mark near the hem. Consider it a Christmas gift. A stained sweatshirt. How thoughtful. I'm a giver. She laughed, and Ethan realized he liked the sound of it. Unguarded and genuine, nothing like the polished CEO voice she probably used in meetings. Okay, she said, I'll take the sweatshirt, but I'm coming back. You sure? Yeah, I'm sure. She met his eyes. If the offer still stands, it stands. Then I'll be back by 2, maybe a little before. She hesitated. And Ethan, thank you for everything. Stop thanking me. I can't help it. She gestured around the apartment. This is the first time in years I've felt like I could just breathe. You can breathe here anytime. Something passed between them, unspoken but understood. Then Sienna grabbed her heels from beside the couch and headed for the door. See you soon, she said. See you soon. The door closed behind her, and Ethan stood in his suddenly quiet apartment, trying to figure out what had just happened. 24 hours ago, he'd been alone on Christmas Eve, resigned to another holiday of going through the motions. Now Sienna Vale was coming back to make lasagna with him and his son. His phone buzzed. A text from Connor. Grandma says we're leaving soon. Did you get the cheese I asked for? Ethan smiled and typed back. Got it. See you at 2. Love you. Then he looked around his apartment, at the crooked Christmas tree, the pull-out couch that still needed to be folded back up, the coffee cups they'd left on the table. Evidence of a night and morning that had turned his quiet, predictable life into something else entirely. He had 2 hours before Connor came home. 2 hours to clean up, run to the store for anything they might need, and prepare himself for the fact that his 7-year-old was about to meet a billionaire in his living room. But first, he needed to sit down and process the fact that for the first time since Lisa died, he'd connected with someone. Really connected, in the way that made you feel less alone in the world. And that terrified him almost as much as it gave him hope. Ethan spent the next hour in a cleaning frenzy that would have made Lisa laugh. She'd always teased him about being the messier one. The guy who left coffee cups on every available surface and forgot to put away laundry for days. But Connor was coming home, and Sienna was coming back. And somehow, those two facts together made him want the apartment to look like someone competent lived there. He folded up the pull-out couch, stored the bedding, wiped down surfaces that didn't really need wiping. He was debating whether to run to the store when his phone rang. Lisa's mother. Hi, Barbara? Ethan, hi. Listen, we're running a bit early. Traffic's lighter than we thought. We'll be there in about 45 minutes, if that's okay? He glanced at the clock, 1:15. Yeah, that's fine. Connor's been talking nonstop about making lasagna with you. I hope you know what you're getting into. I have some idea. We'll see you soon, then. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, Barbara. He hung up and stared at his phone. 45 minutes. Which meant Sienna would get here right around the same time as Connor, and he'd have to figure out how to explain to his 7-year-old why a strange woman was in their apartment on Christmas. His phone buzzed with the text. Sienna. Stuck in traffic. Should be there by 2:15. Is that okay? Ethan typed back. Perfect. Connor's arriving around then, too. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, are you sure about this? I can wait until later if it's easier. It's fine. Come whenever you get here. Okay. See you soon. Ethan set his phone down and took a breath. This was happening. This was actually happening. He was pulling ingredients out of the fridge when he heard footsteps in the hallway, followed by Connor's voice. Dad! Dad, we're here! The door burst open, and Connor came charging in like a small hurricane, still wearing his coat and dragging a backpack that was almost as big as he was. Behind him, Barbara and Richard moved at a more reasonable pace, carrying bags of presents. "Hey, buddy!" Ethan caught Connor in a hug, lifting him off the ground. "Merry Christmas!" "Merry Christmas! Grandma let me open one present early, and it was the Pikachu I wanted, and I named him Sparky." And Connor stopped mid-sentence, finally taking a breath. "Can we make lasagna now?" "In a bit. Let Grandma and Grandpa say hi first." Barbara hugged him, her perfume the same floral scent she'd worn for 30 years. "You look tired." "I'm fine." "You always say that." She patted his cheek. "But you do look better than last year, so I'll take it." Richard shook his hand, the grip firm in that way fathers-in-law had of sizing you up even 3 years after their daughter's death. "Keeping things together? Doing my best?" "That's all anyone can ask." He set down the bags. "We should head out, let you two have your Christmas." "You're welcome to stay," Ethan offered, the same offer he made every year. "We know, but this is your time with Connor." Barbara kissed her grandson's head. "Be good for your dad, okay?" "I'm always good," Connor said with the confidence of a child who genuinely believed it. They left in a flurry of hugs and Merry Christmases, and then it was just Ethan and Connor in the apartment. His son immediately dumped out his backpack, showing off the new Pokemon cards Grandma had given him, the book about space that Grandpa had picked out, the chocolate that he'd definitely already eaten half of. "So," Ethan said, "about lasagna?" A knock at the door interrupted him. Connor looked up. "Who's that?" "A friend. She's going to join us for dinner if that's okay." "A friend or a work friend?" "Just a friend." Ethan went to the door, aware of Connor watching him with the intense curiosity kids had when something in their routine changed. He opened it to find Sienna standing there in jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked completely different from last night, younger, more relaxed, like someone who'd decided to take a day off from being important. "Hi," she said. "Hi, come in." She stepped inside, and her eyes immediately went to Connor, who was staring at her with undisguised interest. "You must be Connor," Sienna said, crouching down to his level. "I'm Sienna." "Are you Dad's friend?" "I am. Do you like Pokemon?" "I don't know much about them, but I'd love to learn." Connor's face lit up like Christmas had come twice. "Really? Because I have so many cards, and Grandma just gave me new ones, and I can show you all of them and explain which ones are good, and Connor," Ethan interrupted gently, "maybe give Sienna a chance to take off her coat first." "Oh, right." Connor stepped back, but he was practically vibrating with excitement. Sienna stood up, catching Ethan's eye with a small smile that said she found this amusing. She shrugged off her coat, expensive looking, probably cashmere, and Ethan hung it by the door. "So," he said, "we were about to start on lasagna. You still up for that?" "Absolutely." She turned to Connor. "Your dad tells me you're the expert on this." "I saw it on a cooking show. You have to layer everything perfectly or it doesn't work right." "That sounds complicated." "It is, but we can do it." Connor grabbed her hand with the casual trust of childhood. "Come on, I'll show you where everything is." He dragged her toward the kitchen, already chattering about the proper cheese-to-sauce ratio he'd learned from television. Sienna caught Ethan's eye over Connor's head, her expression somewhere between amused and overwhelmed. Ethan followed them into the kitchen, where Connor was already pulling out the ingredients they'd bought yesterday. Ground beef, ricotta, mozzarella, lasagna, noodles in a box that promised they didn't need to be pre-boiled. "Okay," Ethan said. "Here's the deal. Connor's in charge of layering. I'm in charge of not burning anything. Sienna, you're on sauce duty. I've never made sauce before. It's from a jar. You'll manage." She laughed, and Connor looked between them like he was trying to figure out what was funny. They started cooking, and it was immediately clear that none of them really knew what they were doing. Connor insisted the noodles had to be arranged in a specific pattern, which meant nothing fit properly in the pan. Ethan overcooked the beef, then had to drain off excess grease while Connor provided running commentary. Sienna opened the jar of sauce and immediately splattered some on her sweater. "This is harder than it looks on TV," Connor announced. "Most things are," Sienna said, dabbing at the sauce stain with a paper towel. They worked in the tiny kitchen, bumping into each other, arguing about whether more cheese was better or if there was such a thing as too much cheese. Connor appointed himself quality control, taste testing everything and declaring it either perfect or needing more salt. "How do you know it needs more salt?" Ethan asked. "You're 7. I have a refined palate," Connor said seriously, clearly repeating something he'd heard somewhere. Sienna snorted with laughter, and Ethan realized she looked genuinely happy. Not polite happy, not professional happy, but the kind of happy that came from doing something ridiculous and enjoying it anyway. "Okay," he said, surveying their creation. "I think that's as good as it's going to get." The lasagna looked like a disaster. Noodles stuck out at odd angles, cheese spilled over the sides, and the top layer was definitely not even. But Connor was proud of it, and that was what mattered. "Now we bake it?" Connor asked. "Now we bake it." Ethan slid the pan into the oven, set the timer for 45 minutes. Connor immediately lost interest in cooking and returned to his Pokemon cards, spreading them across the coffee table in an elaborate organization system only he understood. Sienna sat on the floor next to him, and Ethan watched from the kitchen as his son explained the difference between fire types and water types with the seriousness of a professor lecturing on quantum physics. "So Charizard is really powerful," Connor was saying. "But if you put him against a Blastoise, he's going to lose because water beats fire, see?" "That makes sense," Sienna said, examining the card he'd handed her. "What about this one?" "That's Mewtwo. He's psychic type, which is super rare and really hard to find." "Is he your favorite?" Connor considered this with the gravity it deserved. "He's cool, but I like Pikachu better. Pikachu's electric type, and he's friends with Ash in the show, and he's cute." "Can't argue with that logic." Ethan leaned against the counter, watching them. Sienna asked questions that showed she was actually listening, not just humoring a kid. Connor responded by opening up in the way he did when he felt safe with someone, sharing his entire Pokemon knowledge base without holding back. At some point, the conversation shifted from Pokemon to space. "Dad got me a book about planets," Connor said, running to retrieve it from his pile of presents. "Did you know that Jupiter has 67 moons?" "I did not know that." 67! That's so many moons! He flipped through the book, showing her pictures. "And Saturn has rings made of ice and rock, and Mars might have had water a long time ago." "Do you want to be an astronaut when you grow up?" Connor wrinkled his nose. "No, that's too scary. I want to be a veterinarian, for animals." "That's a great job." "Yeah, because then I could help dogs and cats, and maybe even exotic animals like lizards or snakes." He looked up at her. "Do you have any pets?" "No, I work too much." "That's sad. Everyone should have a pet." "You're probably right." "Well, we don't have a pet either," Connor continued. "Dad says our apartment's too small and he's too busy, but I think we should get a dog anyway. A small one." "Connor," Ethan said from the kitchen, "we've talked about this." "I know, but Sienna agrees with me. Right, Sienna?" She glanced at Ethan, clearly trying not to undermine him. "I think your dad knows what's best for your family." "See?" Ethan said. "Listen to Sienna." Connor sighed dramatically and went back to his cards. Sienna stood up, stretching, and joined Ethan in the kitchen. "He's great," she said quietly. "He's a handful. The best kids usually are." She leaned against the counter next to him. "Thank you for letting me be here." "Thank you for coming." "I almost didn't. I sat in my car for 10 minutes outside trying to decide if this was a terrible idea." "What changed your mind?" "I remembered that every idea I've ever thought was terrible has usually been the right one." She smiled. "Plus, I really didn't want to spend Christmas alone in my penthouse again." The timer beeped. Ethan pulled the lasagna out of the oven, and it looked slightly better cooked. Still messy, but in an intentional way. "That smells amazing," Connor said, appearing beside them. "Let it cool for a few minutes," Ethan said. "Can we open presents while we wait?" Ethan hesitated. He'd gotten Connor the usual things: clothes he needed, books he wanted, the Pokemon cards that were currently scattered across the living room. Nothing elaborate, nothing that required explanation. "Sure," he said. "You can open one more." Connor raced to the tree, examining the wrapped boxes with scientific precision before selecting one. He tore into it with the enthusiasm of childhood, revealing a set of dinosaur figurines he'd been asking for. "Yes, Dad, look. It's the one with the T-Rex and the Triceratops, and he stopped, looking at Sienna. Did you bring a present? Connor, Ethan said sharply. What? I'm just asking. Sienna shook her head. I didn't. I'm sorry. I didn't know I'd be here until this morning. That's okay. Connor went back to his dinosaurs, already setting them up for battle. Ethan caught Sienna's eye, saw the flicker of discomfort there. He doesn't mean anything by it. He's just curious. I know, but I should have thought... She stopped. I could run out, find something. Don't, it's fine. He has plenty. They ate lasagna at the small table, Connor wedged between them, talking non-stop about everything and nothing. The lasagna was mediocre at best, too much cheese, slightly burned on the edges, but Connor declared it the best meal ever, which was what mattered. After dinner, Connor wanted to watch a movie. He selected one about a robot learning to be human, something Ethan had seen at least 20 times. They settled on the couch, Connor in the middle, Ethan on one side, Sienna on the other, and the opening credits rolled. Halfway through, Connor fell asleep, his head against Ethan's shoulder. The kid always did this, crashed hard after the excitement of Christmas. Ethan adjusted him carefully, pulling a blanket over him. He's out, Sienna whispered, like clockwork. They kept watching the movie, volume low, Connor's soft breathing filling the spaces between dialogue. The afternoon light was fading outside, the apartment settling into that particular quiet of winter evenings. Can I ask you something? Sienna said during a slow scene. Yeah. Do you ever think about dating, meeting someone? The question surprised him. Sometimes, not seriously. Why not? Because it's complicated. I've got Connor, and he comes first, always. Ethan paused. And because the idea of letting someone else into our life is, I don't know, scary. Scary how? What if Connor gets attached and then she leaves? What if it doesn't work out and he's the one who gets hurt? He looked down at his sleeping son. I can handle my own heartbreak. I can't handle his. Sienna was quiet for a moment. That's why you work so hard to keep everything stable for him. The routine, the consistency. Yeah. But don't you get lonely? All the time. He said it simply. But lonely is manageable. Watching Connor hurt isn't. That's really selfless. Or really cowardly, depending on how you look at it. I don't think it's cowardly at all. She shifted slightly. I think it's the opposite. You're protecting him even when it costs you something. What about you? Ethan asked. Do you ever think about it? Dating, relationships, all that? I used to, before Dad died, before the company. She picked at a thread on her jeans. But now I can't tell if people are interested in me or in what I represent. The money, the power, the connections. That must be isolating. It is. I went on a few dates last year and every single one felt like a business transaction. They'd ask about Vail Industries before they asked about me. Want to know about mergers and acquisitions instead of what I like to do for fun. She paused. Not that I do anything for fun anymore, so maybe that's a bad example. When was the last time you laughed? Before today. Sienna thought about it. I honestly can't remember. That's depressing. I know. She looked at Connor, still sleeping peacefully. He's lucky to have you, a parent who actually puts him first. I'm lucky to have him. He keeps me from disappearing into work the way you have. Is that what I've done? Disappeared? You tell me. When you look in the mirror, do you see Sienna or do you see the CEO of Vail Industries? She didn't answer right away. On screen, the robot was learning to dance, movements awkward and endearing. I see the CEO, she said finally. I've seen the CEO for so long, I don't know if Sienna even exists anymore. She exists. I've met her. When? Last night, when you showed up at my door scared. This morning, when you cried in my apartment. 20 minutes ago, when you learned about Pokemon from a 7-year-old. He met her eyes. That was all Sienna. The CEO wouldn't have done any of that. The CEO would have handled it better. The CEO would have handled it alone. There's a difference. Sienna looked away, blinking. I hate that you're right. It's my superpower. What is? Being right at the most inconvenient times. She laughed quietly, careful not to wake Connor. Lisa must have loved that about you. She tolerated it, barely. Ethan smiled at the memory. She had this thing she'd do when I was being insufferable. She'd just look at me, raise one eyebrow, and I'd know to shut up. I bet you didn't, though. Never. Which is why she had to perfect the look. They fell silent again, the movie playing on. Connor shifted in his sleep, mumbling something about Pikachu. He talks in his sleep, Sienna observed. Has since he was a baby. Lisa used to record it sometimes. The weird stuff he'd say. We had this whole collection of voice memos. Ethan's throat tightened. I can't listen to them anymore. Her voice is in the background laughing. I'm sorry. Don't be. They're good memories. They just hurt. Good memories can hurt the most, Sienna said, because you know exactly what you've lost. Yeah. The robot on screen was learning about love, about what it meant to care about someone beyond programming and logic. Connor stirred, opened his eyes briefly. Movie over? He mumbled. Almost, buddy. Go back to sleep. He did immediately, the way only children could. Sienna watched him with something that looked like longing. Do you want kids? Ethan asked. I used to think so. Before the company, before everything got so complicated. She pulled the blanket up over Connor a bit more. Now I don't see how I could. What kind of mother would I be when I'm never home? When work always comes first. You could change that. Could I? Or would I just be the same person in a different situation, still choosing work over everything else? You chose to be here today instead of that executive dinner. One day doesn't make me a different person. No, Ethan agreed. But it's a start. The movie ended. Credits rolled. Connor woke up fully this time, stretching and yawning. Can Sienna stay for another movie? He asked. Ethan looked at her. That's up to Sienna. I should probably go, she said. Let you two have your evening. You don't have to. I know, but I should. She stood up, and Connor's face fell. But you just got here. I've been here all afternoon, buddy. Yeah, but... He struggled for the right words. I like you. You're nice. Something in Sienna's expression cracked. I like you too, Connor. A lot. Then stay, please. She looked at Ethan, clearly asking permission. He nodded. Okay, she said. One more movie. Connor cheered and immediately started debating between his options. Eventually, he settled on something about dragons, and they resumed their positions on the couch. 20 minutes in, Ethan noticed Sienna's phone buzzing in her pocket. She pulled it out, glanced at the screen, silenced it. It happened again 5 minutes later, then again. You can answer that, he said quietly. I don't want to. It might be important. If it's important, they'll figure it out without me. She turned the phone face down on the armrest. I'm tired of being available 24/7. Just for today, I want to be unavailable. Connor, oblivious to the adult conversation happening over his head, pointed at the screen. That's the part where the dragon learns to fly. It's really cool. They watched the dragon stumble and fall and try again, over and over, until finally it caught the wind and soared. Connor narrated the entire sequence, even though they could all see what was happening. When the movie ended, Connor started to campaign for a third, but Ethan cut him off. Bath time, he said. But Dad, no buts. You've had a long day, and you need to wind down. Connor turned to Sienna with pleading eyes. Can you tell him I don't need a bath? I think your dad knows what you need. Traitor, Connor muttered, but he was smiling. He went to get ready, and Ethan started cleaning up the living room. Sienna helped without being asked, collecting plates and cups, wiping down the table. You don't have to do that, Ethan said. I know, but I want to. She carried dishes to the kitchen. This is the most normal I've felt in years. Cleaning up after dinner, watching kids' movies, all of it. Normal's underrated. Normal is what I've been missing. She ran water in the sink, started washing. I have people who do this for me. Clean my penthouse, prepare my meals, manage my schedule. Everything's taken care of, which sounds nice until you realize you're living in a life that doesn't actually need you in it. Ethan dried the dishes she washed. You could fire them. And do what? Learn to be a person again? Yeah. I don't know if I remember how. You're doing pretty well today. She handed him a plate, their fingers brushing. Today's not real life. I don't know what today is. Today's Christmas. Christmas in someone else's life. Tomorrow I go back to being the CEO. You don't have to. Don't I? She turned off the water, dried her hands. The board's probably already talking about my absence from that dinner. My assistant's called 6 times. There's an acquisition on the table that needs my signature. She leaned against the counter. This was nice, really nice, but it can't be my reality. Why not? Because I'm Sienna Vale. I run a billion-dollar company. I have responsibilities, obligations, people depending on me to make decisions. And what about what you need? What I need doesn't matter. That's bullshit, and you know it. She looked at him sharply, then her expression softened. Maybe, but it's the truth I've been living with for 4 years. Connor appeared in the doorway, hair damp from his bath, wearing Pokemon pajamas. I'm ready for bed. Already? Ethan checked the time. 8:30, later than he'd thought. I'm tired. It's been a big day. Ethan led him to the bedroom, helped him into bed even though Connor insisted he could do it himself. He pulled the covers up, kissed his forehead. Thanks for today, Dad. It was the best Christmas. Yeah? Yeah, I like Sienna. She's cool. I'm glad. Is she going to come back? The question caught Ethan off guard. I don't know, buddy. I hope she does. She makes you smile more. Get some sleep, Connor. Okay. Love you, Dad. Love you too. He left the door cracked and returned to the living room. Sienna was standing by the window looking out at the street below. The snow had started again, fat flakes drifting past the streetlights. He's asleep? She asked. Getting there. He's wonderful, Ethan. You've done an amazing job with him. I'm just trying not to screw him up too badly. I think you're doing better than that. She turned from the window. I should go, for real this time. Okay. She collected her coat, her purse. Ethan walked her to the door, and they stood there for a moment, neither quite ready to end the day. Thank you, Sienna said, for today, for last night, for all of it. You're welcome here any time, I mean that. I know you do, which makes this harder. What harder? Leaving, going back to my real life. She looked up at him. Today felt like being someone else. Someone who could just exist without the weight of everything I'm supposed to be. You don't have to carry all that weight alone. I've been doing it for so long I don't know any other way. Ethan wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she could change everything starting right now, but he knew it wasn't that simple. She had a company to run, responsibilities that didn't disappear just because she'd spent one day making lasagna and watching kids' movies. Text me when you get home, he said, so I know you made it safe. I will. She opened the door, stepped into the hallway, then turned back. Ethan? Yeah? I meant what I said this morning, about not feeling safe anywhere. But I feel safe here. With you. She paused. I don't know what that means, but I needed you to know it. Before he could respond, she was walking down the hallway, her footsteps echoing on the old tile. Ethan watched until she disappeared down the stairs, then closed the door and leaned against it. His phone buzzed 15 minutes later. Sienna, home safe. Thank you for today. He typed back. Any time, I mean it. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, can I tell you something? Of course. I haven't felt this much like myself in years, and that terrifies me. Ethan stared at the message, trying to figure out how to respond. Finally, why does it terrify you? Because I don't know how to be this person and still be the CEO. They feel like 2 different people. Maybe they don't have to be. I don't see how they couldn't be. He thought about what he'd learned today, watching her with Connor, seeing her laugh over burned lasagna and terrible movies. She'd been more herself in his apartment than she probably was anywhere else. What if you're not 2 different people? What if you're just one person who's been pretending to be someone else for so long you forgot what you actually look like? The 3 dots appeared and stayed there for a long time. Then, I need to think about that. Take all the time you need. Merry Christmas, Ethan. Merry Christmas, Sienna. He set his phone down and went to check on Connor, who was sprawled across his bed with one arm dangling off the side, mouth open, completely dead to the world. Ethan adjusted his blanket, moved a Pokemon card that had somehow ended up under his pillow, and just stood there watching his son sleep. She makes you smile more, Connor had said. Ethan hadn't realized he'd stopped smiling so much until someone noticed. He returned to the living room and sat on the couch, in the same spot where Sienna had sat just hours ago. The apartment felt emptier now, the way spaces did after someone left them. But it was a different kind of empty than before, less like loneliness and more like absence. His phone buzzed again. He expected another message from Sienna, but it was from Barbara. "Thank you for today. Connor called to tell us all about his new friend Sienna. Someone we should know about?" Ethan smiled and typed, "Just someone from work who didn't have anywhere to be on Christmas. Connor seems very taken with her. She's easy to like. And you? Are you taken with her too?" He stared at that message for a long time before responding. "It's complicated. The best things usually are. Just be careful, Ethan. Your heart's been through enough." "I know. But you also deserve to be happy. Don't forget that." "I won't." "Thanks, Barbara." He set his phone aside and sat in the quiet apartment, listening to the building settle around him. Tomorrow, Sienna would go back to being the CEO. He'd go back to being employee number whatever it was. Connor would return to his normal routine, and Christmas would fade into memory the way it always did. But something had shifted. Something had changed in the space of 24 hours that Ethan couldn't quite name but could feel settling into his chest like a new weight. Or maybe not a weight. Maybe more like a possibility. He thought about Sienna crying in his apartment, about the way she'd looked at Connor with something like longing, about how she'd said she felt safe here. And he thought about what she'd texted, "I don't know how to be this person and still be the CEO." Maybe that was the problem. Maybe she'd spent so long being what everyone needed her to be that she'd forgotten she was allowed to need things too. Ethan understood that. He'd spent 3 years being the perfect single dad, the reliable employee, the guy who had it all together even when he was falling apart. He'd built a life around routine and responsibility and never letting anyone see the cracks. But today, for the first time in a long time, the cracks had shown. And instead of everything falling apart, something had started to come together. His phone buzzed one more time. "Sienna, I can't stop thinking about what you said, about being one person pretending to be someone else. And I think you might be right, and I think I've been pretending for so long I don't know how to stop. So stop. It's not that simple. Why not?" A long pause. Then, "Because if I stop being the CEO, who am I?" Ethan read the message 3 times before responding. "You're Sienna, the woman who showed up at my door scared and found the courage to stay. The woman who learned about Pokemon from a 7-year-old and made terrible lasagna and laughed at a kid's movie. That's who you are. That was just one day. One day is how every change starts." Another long pause. "I need to go. Work emergency." "But Ethan?" "Yeah? Thank you. For seeing me, the real me. Anytime." The messages stopped. Ethan sat alone in his apartment, the Christmas tree lights still blinking their irregular pattern, and wondered what happened next. The work emergency turned into 3 hours of phone calls and emails. Sienna, sitting in her penthouse with her laptop open, still wearing the jeans and sweater from Ethan's apartment. She'd meant to change into something more professional, more CEO-like, but somehow she couldn't bring herself to do it. Marcus had found footage of the black sedan. Stolen plates, like he'd said, but the cameras had tracked it through 5 intersections before it disappeared into an area with no coverage. The driver wore a hat pulled low, face obscured. Professional. Deliberate. "We need to escalate this," Marcus said over the phone. "Police, FBI if necessary. This isn't some amateur sending creepy messages anymore." "I know." "Then let me make the calls." "Tomorrow." Sienna rubbed her eyes. "It's Christmas night, Marcus. Nobody's going to do anything until the holiday's over anyway. You're being stubborn." "I'm being practical. One more night won't make a difference." He didn't argue, but she could hear his disapproval in the silence. They went over security protocols, reviewed her schedule for the next week, discussed which board members needed to be informed and which could be kept in the dark until they had more information. When she finally hung up, it was past midnight. The penthouse was dark except for her laptop screen. The city sprawled out below through floor-to-ceiling windows, 47 floors up, insulated from the noise and mess of actual life. Her phone buzzed. A text from her assistant. "Board wants a meeting first thing tomorrow. 8 a.m. Should I confirm?" Sienna stared at the message. Tomorrow was supposed to be a recovery day, a chance to ease back into work mode. But the board didn't care about that. They wanted answers about the acquisition, about why she'd missed the executive dinner, about whether she was still capable of running the company. She typed back, "Confirm it." Then before she could stop herself, she opened her conversation with Ethan and scrolled back through their messages. His words from earlier, "You're Sienna, the woman who showed up at my door scared and found the courage to stay." The woman who showed up at his door didn't exist in this penthouse. That woman had laughed at Connor's dinosaur impressions and burned lasagna and fallen asleep on a pull-out couch. This penthouse belonged to the CEO, the person Sienna had built from grief and responsibility and the crushing weight of expectations. She typed, "You still awake?" The response came immediately. "Yeah, can't sleep. You okay?" "Physically, yes. Everything else, unclear. Want to talk about it?" "Not really. But I might anyway." "I'm listening." Sienna got up from the couch, walked to the window. The city looked clean from up here, ordered and manageable. Nothing like the messy reality of streets and people and actual life. "My security team found the car. Stolen plates, professional setup. They want to involve the police." "That sounds smart. It sounds like admitting I can't handle this myself. Sienna, someone's stalking you. That's not something anyone should handle alone. The board's going to use this against me. Proof that I'm too young, too inexperienced, too much of a target to run the company safely. Or proof that you're dealing with a serious threat and handling it responsibly. You don't know how they think." "No. But I know how you think. And I know you're looking for reasons to stay trapped in a life that's making you miserable." She stared at that message for a long time. The accusation stung because it was true. "I'm not trapped. I chose this 4 years ago, when you were grieving your father and didn't know what else to do. That doesn't mean you have to keep choosing it. It's not that simple." "Why not?" "Because people depend on me. 800 employees who need their jobs. A board that trusted my father's vision. A company that was his entire life." "What about your life?" Sienna sat down on the floor, back against the window, phone clutched in both hands. "I don't know if I have one anymore. Everything's about the company. Who I date, where I go, what I wear, what I eat. It's all calculated for maximum business advantage." That sounds exhausting. It is. But it's also safe. I know the rules, know what's expected. There's no uncertainty and no happiness. Happiness isn't the goal. Then what is? She thought about that. What was the goal? Keep the company profitable? Honor her father's legacy? Prove to everyone who doubted her that a 28-year-old woman could run a billion-dollar enterprise? I don't know anymore. Maybe that's the real problem. What do you mean? You've spent 4 years working toward a goal you never questioned, but goals change. People change. Maybe it's time to figure out what you actually want instead of what you think you should want. Sienna closed her eyes, leaning her head back against the glass. What if I don't know what I want? Then figure it out. You're smart enough to run a company. You're smart enough to figure out your own life. You make it sound easy. It's not easy, but it's worth doing. She sat there on her penthouse floor, the city lights reflecting off the glass behind her, and thought about what she'd felt in Ethan's apartment. Safe, seen, human in a way she hadn't been in years. Can I ask you something? Always. Why do you care? You barely know me. I'm your boss's boss's boss. This could get complicated for you, because yesterday you showed up at my door scared and needing help, and I gave it. Everything after that is just details. That's really your philosophy? Just help people and figure out the rest later? Pretty much. That's either really brave or really stupid. Probably both. Sienna smiled despite herself. Connor asked if I was coming back. What did you tell him? That I didn't know. Which was honest, but probably not what he wanted to hear. He likes you. He doesn't like most people. I like him too. He's authentic in a way adults forget how to be. That's a nice way of saying he has no filter. Same thing. She could picture Connor in her mind, the way he'd explained Pokemon with complete seriousness, the way he'd fallen asleep during the movie with no self-consciousness about it. Kids didn't perform for audiences. They just existed. I want to come back. But I don't know if I should. Why not? Because I don't know what this is. Us, I mean. This whole situation. Does it need to be something? Doesn't it? We're not friends exactly. We're not colleagues. We're not whatever else people are. We're two people who had a conversation at 1 a.m. on Christmas Eve and realized we understood each other. That's enough. Is it? Why wouldn't it be? Sienna thought about all the relationships in her life that had been transactional. business contacts who wanted deals, potential romantic partners who wanted status, even friendships that felt more like networking opportunities than genuine connection. Because nothing in my life is ever that simple. There's always an agenda, always something people want from me. I don't want anything from you. Everyone wants something. Okay, fine. I want to not eat dinner alone every night while Connor's at his grandparents'. I want adult conversation that isn't about project timelines and budget overruns. I want to feel like I'm not the only person in the world carrying around grief nobody else can see. She read the message 3 times. That's not wanting something from me. That's wanting to not be alone. Same thing, isn't it? You wanted somewhere safe to go when you were scared. I want somewhere safe to be when I'm lonely. We both needed the same thing. And what's that? Someone who gives a damn. Sienna felt tears prickling at her eyes, sharp and unexpected. She'd built such a careful life, so controlled and managed, that genuine emotion felt like a system failure. I haven't cried in front of anyone in 4 years. Until yesterday. How did it feel? Terrifying. Embarrassing. Like I was falling apart and couldn't stop it. And after? Lighter. Like I'd been holding something too heavy for too long and finally put it down. That's what happens when you let people in. It's messy and scary, and it doesn't fit into a business plan. But it's also the only thing that makes life worth living. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. When did you get so wise? Around the same time I learned that grief doesn't follow a schedule, and love doesn't make sense, and sometimes the best thing you can do is just show up. I want to show up. I'm just not sure I remember how. You showed up yesterday, you can do it again. What if I mess it up? What if I let you down or hurt Connor or make everything complicated? Then we'll figure it out. That's what people do. I'm not good at figuring things out when there's no clear answer. Nobody is. But we do it anyway. Sienna stood up, her legs stiff from sitting on the floor. The penthouse felt even emptier than usual, all that expensive furniture and carefully curated art that meant nothing. I have a board meeting at 8 tomorrow morning. They're going to ask questions I don't have answers for. About the stalker? About everything. Why I missed the dinner, why I'm not taking the acquisition seriously, whether I'm still capable of leading the company. What are you going to tell them? I don't know. The truth would be career suicide. What's the truth? That I'm exhausted, that I'm scared, that I spent Christmas with a project manager and his son making terrible lasagna, and it was the best day I've had in 4 years. That's not career suicide. That's being human. In my world, same thing. She walked to her bedroom, stared at the perfectly made bed that a housekeeper had prepared while she was at Ethan's apartment. Everything in her life was managed by someone else. Even her grief had been outsourced to a therapist she saw twice a month for 50-minute sessions that never seemed to help. I don't want to go to that meeting tomorrow, so don't. I have to. It's my responsibility. No, you feel like you have to because you've built your entire identity around being responsible. There's a difference. You're asking me to just not show up? To bail on the board meeting? I'm asking you to consider what happens if you do. Really consider it, not just panic. Sienna sat on the edge of her bed. They'd be angry. My assistant would have a nervous breakdown. The board would probably call an emergency session to discuss my fitness for the role. And then what? And then, I don't know. They'd demand an explanation. I'd have to justify my absence. And what would you tell them? That I needed a day. One day to not be the CEO, to not have all the answers, to just be a person. Would they fire you for that? Maybe. Probably not, but maybe. And if they did, the question hung there, impossible and terrifying. If they fired her, she'd lose everything she'd worked for. The company, the position, the proof that she could carry on her father's legacy. But she'd also lose the 18-hour days, the constant pressure, the loneliness of always being in charge and never being allowed to be uncertain. I don't know. I've never let myself think about it. Maybe you should. That's easy for you to say. You're not the one who'd lose a billion-dollar company. No. But I am the one who lost my wife and had to rebuild my entire life from nothing. And I can tell you that losing something you thought defined you doesn't mean you stop existing. It just means you get to figure out who you are without it. Sienna lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. I'm not brave enough for that. You were brave enough to show up at a stranger's door at midnight. You're braver than you think. That was different. I was terrified. Exactly. Bravery isn't not being scared, remember? She did remember. She'd said it to him or he'd said it to her. The conversation had blurred together, all their words mixing into something that felt more true than anything she'd heard in years. What if I don't go tomorrow? What if I just don't show up? Then you don't show up, and whatever happens after, you deal with it. You make it sound so simple. It is simple. It's just not easy. She thought about her assistant's reaction, about Marcus's frustration, about the board members who'd be sitting in that conference room wondering where she was. And she thought about Ethan's apartment, about Connor's laugh, about feeling like a person instead of a position. If I don't go, can I come there, to your place? The 3 dots appeared immediately. You can always come here. But Sienna? Yeah? Make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. Not to avoid the board, but because it's what you actually want. What if I don't know the difference? Then sleep on it. Decide in the morning when you're thinking clearly. Okay. Ethan? Yeah? Thank you. For listening, for not judging, for all of it. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a big day either way. Good night. Good night. Sienna set her phone on the nightstand and closed her eyes, but sleep didn't come. She lay there thinking about the board meeting, about what would happen if she didn't show up, about whether she had the courage to choose herself over the company for once. At 3 a.m., she gave up on sleep and went to her home office. Her laptop was still open, still showing the acquisition documents that needed her review. She closed them without reading and opened a blank document instead. She started typing. Not about business, not about strategy, just thoughts that had been building for 4 years with nowhere to go. She wrote about inheriting the company, about the weight of expectation, about spending her 30th birthday alone in her penthouse with a bottle of wine and a quarterly report. She wrote about the messages from the stalker, about feeling unsafe in her own life, about driving aimlessly through the city with nowhere to go. And she wrote about showing up at Ethan's door, about being believed without question, about Connor's unfiltered kindness and terrible lasagna and what it felt like to be seen as Sienna instead of the CEO. By the time the sun came up, she had 12 pages of raw, unfiltered truth that would horrify her PR team and probably get her committed if anyone ever read it. But it was honest. Maybe the first honest thing she'd written in years. Her alarm went off at 6:30. Time to get ready for the board meeting. Time to put on the armor of expensive suits and perfect makeup and the performance of having everything under control. Sienna stared at her closet, at the rows of designer clothes chosen for maximum professional impact. Then she closed the closet door and pulled on the same jeans and sweater from yesterday. She made coffee, badly because her assistant usually handled that, and sat at her kitchen island watching the sunrise over the city. Her phone was already buzzing with messages. Her assistant confirming the meeting. Marcus asking if she'd made a decision about the police. 3 different board members wanting to discuss agenda items before the formal meeting. She ignored all of them and opened her conversation with Ethan instead. I'm not going to the meeting. His response came fast. You sure? No. But I'm doing it anyway. What changed? I spent all night writing down everything I've been too scared to say out loud. And I realized that I've been performing someone else's life for so long, I forgot I'm allowed to have my own. What are you going to do instead? I don't know yet. Maybe just sit here and drink bad coffee and figure out who I am when I'm not being the CEO. That's a good start. Is the offer still open? To come over? Always. But Connor has school today, so it'll just be me until 3:30. That's okay. I think I need to talk to just you anyway. Doors open. Literally and figuratively. Sienna smiled at that, then called her assistant. Good morning, Ms. Vale. I've got your schedule ready and the board meeting materials are... Cancel the meeting. Silence on the other end. Then, I'm sorry, what? The board meeting. Cancel it. Ms. Vale, I can't just cancel a board meeting. They're already gathering. Some of them flew in specifically for this. Tell them I apologize, but something came up that requires my immediate attention. We'll reschedule for next week. They're not going to accept that. They'll want to know what's more important than tell them it's personal, and that's all they need to know. More silence. Sienna could practically hear her assistant's panic. Are you sure about this? This is going to create problems. I'm aware. Cancel it anyway. Yes, Ms. Vale. Sienna hung up before she could second-guess herself. Her phone immediately started ringing. A board member. She declined the call. Another one. Declined. Marcus. She hesitated, then answered. Please tell me you didn't just cancel the board meeting, he said. I did. Sienna, what the hell are you thinking? I'm thinking I need a day. One day where I'm not performing for the board or managing crises or pretending I have everything figured out. This is career suicide. Maybe. Or maybe it's the sanest decision I've made in 4 years. Where are you going to be? I need to know for security purposes. She almost lied, then decided she was done with that. I'm going to spend the day with a friend. What friend? I thought you didn't have friends outside the office. I didn't, until 2 days ago. Sienna. Marcus, I appreciate your concern, but I'm safe. I'm making my own choices, and I need you to trust that I know what I'm doing. Do you know what you're doing? Not even a little bit, but I'm doing it anyway. She hung up before he could argue further and turned off her phone completely. The silence that followed was deafening. Sienna showered, dried her hair without styling it, put on minimal makeup. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. No power suit, no professional mask, just her in jeans and a sweater with damp hair and no agenda. She grabbed her keys and headed for the door, then stopped. On her entryway table was a framed photo of her father, taken the year before he died. He was standing in front of the Vale Industries building, looking proud and confident and certain about everything. I'm sorry, Dad, she said to the photo, but I can't keep living your dream. I need to find my own. The drive to Ethan's apartment took 30 minutes. She parked on the street, fed the meter, and stood outside his building trying to summon the courage to go inside. Her phone was off, which meant her entire team was probably losing their minds. The board was likely convening an emergency session. Her assistant was probably crying at her desk. And Sienna was standing on a street corner in a neighborhood she'd never visited before her life fell apart, about to walk into an apartment building that definitely violated several fire codes, to spend the day with a man she barely knew. It was the most terrifying thing she'd done in years. She climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, found his door, and knocked. Ethan opened it immediately, like he'd been waiting. He looked at her for a long moment, taking in her expression, her casual clothes, the fact that she was standing there at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday when she should be in a board meeting. You actually did it, he said. I actually did it. How do you feel? Like I just jumped off a cliff, and I'm not sure if I'm flying or falling. Come in. We'll figure out which one together. She stepped inside, and Ethan closed the door behind her. The apartment looked different in the morning light, smaller, more lived in, real in a way her penthouse never was. Coffee? He asked. Please. He poured her a cup, and they sat at the small table by the window. Outside, the city was going about its Tuesday morning routine. People heading to work, buses running their routes, life happening without her input or control. So, Ethan said, you want to talk about what happened, or do you want to just sit here in silence until you're ready? I don't know. Both? She wrapped her hands around the coffee mug. I keep waiting to panic, to realize I made a huge mistake. But mostly I just feel free? Exhausted, but yeah, free too. She looked at him. Is that normal? I don't know what normal is anymore, but it sounds about right. My entire team is probably freaking out. Probably. The board's going to demand an explanation. Let them demand. Marcus thinks I'm having a breakdown. Are you? Sienna thought about it. I don't think so. I think I'm finally having a breakthrough. Ethan smiled. Good. Those are better. They sat in comfortable silence, drinking coffee, watching the morning happen outside. Sienna felt her phone in her pocket, still off, still silenced, and resisted the urge to turn it on and deal with the fallout. Can I ask you something? She said. Yeah. When Lisa died, how did you know what to do next? How did you figure out how to keep going? Ethan set down his mug. I didn't, not at first. For about 6 months, I just went through the motions. Wake up, take care of Connor, go to work, come home, repeat. I wasn't living, I was just existing. What changed? Connor's teacher called that meeting I told you about, and I realized I was so focused on not falling apart that I'd forgotten to actually live. So I started making different choices. Small ones at first. Leave work on time, play with Connor instead of cleaning the apartment. Let myself feel sad instead of pushing it away. Did it get easier? Eventually, Still hard sometimes, but it's a different kind of hard. Less like drowning, more like swimming in deep water. You're still working, but you're moving forward. Sienna absorbed this. I feel like I've been drowning for 4 years and convincing myself it was swimming. Maybe it's time to get out of the water. And do what? Whatever you want. That's the whole point. She laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. I don't even know what I want. I've spent so long doing what I'm supposed to want that my own desires feel completely foreign. Then start small. What do you want right now, in this moment? To sit here and drink coffee and not think about quarterly projections. Done. What else? To talk to someone who isn't trying to get something from me. Also done. To feel like a person instead of a position. You're 3 for 3. Ethan leaned forward. See? You do know what you want. You've just been ignoring it. Because wanting things for myself feels selfish. It's not selfish, it's necessary. Sienna set down her mug and looked at him directly. Why are you helping me? Really? Because I keep waiting for you to want something, a promotion, a favor, a connection, but you never ask. Because I don't want those things. Everyone wants something. Okay, fine. I want to not spend every evening alone wondering if this is all my life is going to be. I want Connor to see me as someone who can be happy, not just someone who's surviving. And I want to believe that connection between people can be real and not just transactional. He paused. You showing up here, being honest, letting yourself be scared and uncertain, that helps me believe it's possible. So I'm helping you by falling apart in your apartment. You're helping me by being human in my apartment. There's a difference. She felt tears coming again and didn't try to stop them this time. I'm so tired of pretending to have all the answers. Then stop. It's not that easy. Why not? Because if I stop being the CEO who has everything figured out, who am I? You're Sienna, just Sienna, and that's enough. The tears came faster. Ethan handed her a napkin from the holder on the table, and she took it gratefully, wiping her face. I wrote 12 pages last night, she said. Just stream of consciousness about everything I've been feeling. And reading it back, I realized I don't even like my life. I've built this incredibly successful career that makes me miserable. So change it. How? I can't just quit. People depend on me. People depended on you when you were running yourself into the ground, too. But you weren't any good to them, burned out and exhausted. The board would never accept me making major changes. The board doesn't get to dictate your entire existence. They kind of do when I'm running their company. It's not their company. It's yours. Your father left it to you, not to them. Sienna had never thought about it that way. She'd always seen herself as a steward of her father's legacy, responsible to the board and the shareholders and everyone who depended on Vail Industries for their livelihood. But Ethan was right. The company was hers. Her father had chosen her specifically, had trusted her with everything he'd built. Maybe that meant he'd trusted her to change things too. I need to think about this, she said. Really think, not just react. Take all the time you need. Can I stay here, just for today? Stay as long as you want. She pulled out her phone, stared at the black screen. I should probably turn this on at some point. Deal with the fallout. Or you could leave it off and deal with it tomorrow. That's very irresponsible. Sometimes irresponsibility is exactly what you need. Sienna set the phone on the table, screen still dark. Okay, 1 day of irresponsibility. I can do that. Good. Now what? Now, she thought about it. Now I have no idea. What do people do on random Tuesdays when they're not working? Whatever they want. That's the beauty of it. Give me an example. Ethan stood up, started rummaging through a cabinet. Well, I was planning to clean out this junk drawer that's been a disaster for 6 months. Very exciting stuff. Can I help? With the junk drawer? Yeah. I've never cleaned out a junk drawer before. Might be therapeutic. He laughed. Okay, sure. Let's clean out the junk drawer. They spent the next hour sorting through rubber bands and old receipts and batteries that may or may not still work. Ethan found a love note from Lisa tucked behind some instruction manuals, and he went quiet for a minute before carefully placing it in a box he kept in his bedroom. Sienna found herself relaxing in a way she never did in her penthouse. There was something grounding about simple tasks with no major consequence. A dead battery didn't matter. A lost receipt changed nothing. The stakes were so low they barely existed. "This is nice," she said, holding up a particularly tangled ball of rubber bands. "Cleaning junk drawers?" "Being useful in a way that doesn't require a PhD and 4 years of business experience. You're welcome to clean all my junk drawers. Don't tempt me, I might actually do it." They moved on to other small tasks. Ethan did laundry while Sienna read a book she found on his shelf, some mystery novel with a creased spine that had clearly been read multiple times. They made sandwiches for lunch, nothing fancy, just turkey and cheese, and ate them while watching game shows on TV. It was the most normal day Sienna had experienced in 4 years, and it was exactly what she needed. Around 2:30, Ethan's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, frowned slightly. "It's work," he said. "Give me a minute." He stepped into the bedroom, and Sienna could hear his voice through the door, professional and measured. When he came back out 10 minutes later, he looked concerned. "Everything okay?" she asked. "There's an issue with the Harper Plaza project. Contractors threatening to walk off the job over a payment dispute." He ran a hand through his hair. "I need to go down there and sort it out before it turns into a legal mess." "Go. I'll be fine here." "You sure? I could probably handle it over the phone." "Ethan, go. I'm not going to fall apart just because you leave the apartment for a few hours." He hesitated, then grabbed his coat. "Connor gets home at 3:30. Mrs. Chen from next door usually keeps an eye on him if I'm running late. But if you're here, I can stay with him until you get back." "You don't have to." "I want to. Go deal with your crisis. I've got this one covered." He looked at her for a long moment, then kissed her forehead so quickly she barely registered it before he was out the door. Sienna sat in the sudden silence, her hand going to her forehead where his lips had been. That was new. That was definitely new. She didn't have time to analyze it because 15 minutes later she heard a key in the lock. The door opened and Connor came barreling in, dropping his backpack with a thud. "Dad, you'll never believe what happened at school." He stopped when he saw Sienna sitting on the couch. "Sienna, you're here." "Hi, Connor. Your dad had to run out for a work thing. He asked me to hang out with you until he gets back." "Cool." Connor kicked off his shoes. "Did you know that sharks have been around for millions of years? We learned about it in science today, and Mrs. Peterson said they're older than trees." "I did not know that." "It's true. And there are over 500 types of sharks, but most of them don't hurt people. Only a few kinds are dangerous." He launched into a detailed explanation of shark species while Sienna listened, grateful for the distraction from her own spiraling thoughts. Connor had homework, a math worksheet, and some reading, and he sat at the table working on it while telling her about his day, his teacher, his best friend Marcus, who'd been out sick. "Do you want a snack?" he asked when he finished his homework. "What kind of snack?" "We have apples and peanut butter, or crackers, or both." "Both sounds good." They assembled snacks together, Connor standing on a chair to reach the cabinet, and settled back on the couch. A kids' show was playing on TV, something about animals and adventure that Connor insisted was educational. "Sienna?" he said during a commercial break. "Yeah?" "Are you going to be around more? Because I liked having you here for Christmas." The question caught her off guard. "I don't know, buddy. That's kind of up to your dad and me to figure out." "But you want to, right?" "Yeah, I do." "Good. Because I think you make Dad happy. He smiles more when you're here." "Does he not smile much usually?" Connor shrugged. "He smiles at me, but it's different, like he's trying really hard. When you're here, it's easier." Sienna felt something tighten in her chest. She'd been so focused on her own mess that she hadn't fully registered the impact she was having on Ethan and Connor's life. They had their own routine, their own balance, and she was disrupting it. "Connor, can I tell you something?" "Okay." "I'm kind of a mess right now. I'm figuring out a lot of stuff about my life, and I don't have all the answers, so I can't promise I'll be around all the time or that things won't be complicated." He thought about this seriously. "That's okay. Dad says everyone's a mess sometimes. He says the important thing is being honest about it." "Your dad's pretty smart." "I know." Connor went back to his show, apparently satisfied with the conversation. Ethan came home around 6, looking tired but relieved. "Got it sorted out. Contractor's back on schedule." "Good. How was everything here?" "Fine. Connor taught me about sharks." "Ah, the shark phase. That's been going strong for 2 weeks now." It's fascinating, Connor protested from the couch. They made dinner together, spaghetti this time, much easier than lasagna, and Sienna found herself thinking how natural this felt. The three of them in the small kitchen, Connor setting the table while Ethan stirred sauce and Sienna filled glasses with water. This was what she'd been missing. Not the big romantic gestures or the fancy dates or the Instagram-worthy moments, just the quiet, ordinary rhythm of existing with people who cared about her. After dinner, after Connor went to bed, she and Ethan sat on the couch with mugs of tea. "You kissed my forehead today," she said. "I did. Sorry, that was... Don't apologize. I'm just acknowledging it happened." "Okay." They sat with that for a moment. "Ethan, what is this? Us?" He took a breath. "I don't know. But I know I like having you here. I know Connor lights up when you walk in the door. And I know that for the first time since Lisa died, I'm thinking about a future that includes someone other than just me and Connor. That terrifies me. Me too. I don't know how to do this, the dating thing, the relationship thing. I've been alone for so long. So have I. We'll figure it out together. What if I can't give you what you need? What if I'm too broken or too focused on work or..." He cut her off by taking her hand. "What if we stop worrying about what ifs and just see what happens?" Sienna looked down at their joined hands. His were calloused from actual work, from building things and fixing things and taking care of his son. Hers were soft, manicured, hands that signed documents and shook hands in boardrooms. "I should probably deal with my phone," she said. "Face whatever's waiting for me." "Do you want to?" "No, but I can't avoid it forever." She pulled out her phone and turned it on. It immediately exploded with notifications. 47 missed calls. Over 100 texts. Emails flooding in faster than she could count. "That's impressive," Ethan said. "That's terrifying." She scrolled through the messages. Her assistant, frantic. Marcus, professional but clearly concerned. Board members ranging from curious to furious. And one from her father's former business partner, now the board chairman. "We need to talk. Tomorrow, my office, 9 a.m. This isn't optional." "I'm in trouble," she said. "What kind of trouble?" "The kind where the board chairman summons you to his office. That's never good." "Are you going to go?" She thought about it. 24 hours ago, she would have panicked, would have immediately started crafting explanations and apologies. But now, after a day of cleaning junk drawers and watching Connor's homework and letting herself just be, she felt different. "Yeah, I'll go, but not to apologize." She looked at Ethan. "I'm going to tell them the truth, that I needed a day, that I'm making changes, and that they can either support me or find a new CEO. That's a big risk. I know. But I'm tired of playing it safe when playing it safe is killing me. I'm proud of you." The words hit harder than she expected. When was the last time someone had said they were proud of her for anything other than quarterly earnings? "Thank you," she whispered. He squeezed her hand. "Whatever happens tomorrow, you know you've got somewhere to come back to, right?" "Yeah, I know." They sat there on his couch, hands linked, and Sienna thought about how much her life had changed in 48 hours. She'd gone from terrified and alone to terrified but accompanied, from drowning to learning to swim. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't fixed, but it was a start. And for the first time in 4 years, a start felt like enough. Sienna left Ethan's apartment at 7 the next morning, early enough that Connor was still asleep. Ethan walked her to the door, and they stood there for a moment in the hallway, neither quite ready to let go of what the last 2 days had been. "You've got this," he said. "I don't feel like I've got this." "Fake it until you do. That's what I did for the first year after Lisa died." "Did it work?" "Eventually I stopped faking." He touched her face, gentle and brief. "Text me after. Let me know you're okay." "I will." She drove to her penthouse in the early morning quiet, the city still waking up around her. In her apartment, everything was exactly as she'd left it. The laptop open on the couch, the coffee cup in the sink, the 12 pages of writing she'd done in the middle of the night still pulled up on her screen. She showered and dressed carefully, choosing a suit that felt like armor but not a costume. Navy blue, professional but not trying too hard. She dried her hair, applied makeup with a steadier hand than she expected, and looked at herself in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't the CEO who had everything figured out, but she also wasn't the terrified person who'd shown up at Ethan's door on Christmas Eve. She was somewhere in between, and maybe that was exactly where she needed to be. At 8:45, Sienna walked into the Vale Industries building. The security guard at the front desk did a double take. She was never this late, but said nothing. The elevator ride to the executive floor felt longer than usual, each floor ticking by like a countdown. Her assistant was waiting when she stepped off, practically vibrating with anxiety. "Ms. Vale, thank goodness. Mr. Harrison is waiting for you in his office, and the board has been calling all morning, and there are at least 15 fires that need your immediate attention." Take a breath, Michelle. I can't take a breath. Do you have any idea what yesterday was like? The board meeting canceled with no explanation. You unreachable all day. Rumors flying that you'd quit or been hospitalized or, "I'm fine, I needed a day, that's all." But you can't just take a day without telling anyone. You're the CEO. Which means I can take a day if I need one. Sienna set her bag on Michelle's desk. "What time is Harrison expecting me?" 9 o'clock. He said to send you straight in when you arrived. Okay. Hold all my calls until I'm done with him. But the acquisition team needs, hold them. Everything can wait an hour. Michelle looked like she wanted to argue, but didn't. Sienna walked down the hallway to the corner office that had belonged to her father, then to 3 interim CEOs, and now to Richard Harrison, the board chairman and her father's oldest friend. She knocked once and entered without waiting for permission. Harrison was sitting behind his desk, reading something on his computer. He looked up when she entered, and his expression was hard to read. Not angry exactly, but not pleased either. "Sienna, sit down." She sat in one of the leather chairs across from his desk, the same chairs where she'd sat dozens of times before. But this time felt different. This time, she wasn't here to perform or placate or prove herself. "You want to explain what happened yesterday?" Harrison asked. "I needed a personal day. I took one." "You canceled a board meeting without notice. Do you understand how that looks?" "I understand it's inconvenient, but I'm allowed to have personal emergencies." "Was it an emergency? Because Marcus seems to think you were fine, just choosing not to show up." "Marcus doesn't know everything about my life." Harrison leaned back in his chair, studying her. He was 67, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, someone who'd been in boardrooms longer than Sienna had been alive. "Your father and I started this company together," he said. "Did you know that? Before he bought me out, and it became his entirely, we were partners. I watched him build Vale Industries from nothing, watched him sacrifice everything for it, his health, his marriage, time with you, and when he died, I promised him I'd make sure his legacy continued." "I know the story, Richard. Then you know why I'm concerned when you start making erratic decisions, missing meetings, disappearing without explanation, ignoring your responsibilities. One day isn't erratic. One day is human. You're not paid to be human. You're paid to run this company." The words landed like a slap, and Sienna felt anger rising in her chest. "That's the problem. Everyone keeps telling me what I'm paid to do, what I'm supposed to be, what my father would have wanted. But nobody asks what I want." "What you want is irrelevant. You accepted this position. You made commitments." "I accepted this position when I was 28 years old and drowning in grief. I thought honoring my father's legacy would help me process losing him, but all it's done is trap me in a life that's making me miserable." Harrison's expression didn't change. "So what are you saying? You want to quit?" "Did she?" Sienna sat with the question, really considered it. A week ago, the answer would have been an immediate no. The company was everything, her father's legacy, her entire identity. But now? "I don't know," she said honestly, "but I know I can't keep doing this the way I have been. Working 18-hour days, never taking time off, making myself available every second of every day. It's killing me." "Your father worked those same hours, and he died of a heart attack at 62. Sienna met Harrison's eyes. "Is that what you want for me? To sacrifice everything until there's nothing left?" "I want you to honor the responsibility you accepted." "I am honoring it, by recognizing that I'm human and I have limits and I need to make changes or I won't be able to run this company at all." Harrison was quiet for a long moment, then, "What kind of changes?" "I want to hire a COO, someone to handle day-to-day operations so I can focus on strategy and vision instead of drowning in minutiae." "That's going to be expensive." "It's going to be necessary. I also want to restructure my schedule. No more weekend work unless it's truly critical. Actual vacation time. and I want to be clear with the board that my personal life is off limits for discussion. The board has a right to be concerned about anything that affects your ability to lead. The board has a right to question my professional decisions. They don't have a right to control my entire existence." Harrison studied her, and Sienna could see him recalculating. She wasn't the grieving 28-year-old he'd watched stumble into the CEO role anymore. She wasn't performing or trying to prove she belonged. She was just stating facts. "The board isn't going to like this," he said finally. "I'm not asking them to like it. I'm telling them how it's going to be. And if they push back, then they can find a new CEO." The words came out steady, certain. "I'm willing to run this company, Richard. I'm good at it, and I care about it. But I'm not willing to destroy myself doing it. So either the board accepts that I'm a human being with needs and limitations, or they accept my resignation." "You're bluffing." "I'm not. For the first time in 4 years, I'm actually not." Harrison leaned forward, elbows on his desk. "What changed? 2 weeks ago, you would never have said any of this." Sienna thought about Christmas Eve, about showing up at Ethan's door terrified and alone, about Connor's laugh and terrible lasagna and what it felt like to be seen as just herself. "I remembered that I'm a person," she said, "not just a position, and that the company my father built was supposed to make people's lives better, not worse, including mine. Your father would be proud of you." The statement surprised her. For threatening to quit? For finally standing up for yourself? Harrison smiled slightly. "He worried about you, you know. The last conversation we had before he died, he said he was concerned you'd sacrifice your whole life for the company the way he did. He didn't want that for you." Sienna felt tears prickling but refused to let them fall. "He never told me that. He didn't know how. Your father was brilliant at business and terrible at emotions, but he loved you, and he would want you to be happy, not just successful." "I haven't been happy in a long time." "Then it's time to change that." Harrison stood up. "I'll talk to the board. We'll bring in some COO candidates, restructure your schedule, make this work." "But Sienna?" "Yeah? Don't disappear again without warning. Even CEOs need personal days, but we need to know you're safe." "Fair enough." She left his office feeling lighter than she had in years. The conversation wasn't perfect. Harrison had pushed back, questioned her, made it clear this would be complicated. But he hadn't fired her, hadn't told her she was being unreasonable, had actually listened. Michelle was waiting at her desk with a list of urgent items, but Sienna held up a hand. "Give me an hour. Then we'll go through everything together." "But the acquisition will still be there in an hour, I promise." She went to her own office and closed the door. The space felt different now, less like a prison and more like just a room. She pulled out her phone and texted Ethan. "Meeting done. Still employed, making changes." His response came immediately. "Proud of you." "How do you feel?" "Terrified, relieved. Like I just jumped off another cliff." "And?" "Still figuring out if I'm flying or falling. Either way, you've got somewhere to land." She smiled at that, then set her phone aside and opened her laptop. There was work to do, actual work that mattered, not just going through motions. She started drafting a proposal for board approval, outlining the COO position, the schedule changes, the new boundaries she needed. It took 3 hours to write, and when she was done, she sent it to Harrison with a note. For the board's review, non-negotiable items marked in red. Then she went through the urgent items with Michelle, delegated what could be delegated, and handled what actually required her attention. By 5:30, she was exhausted, but in a productive way, not the soul-crushing way she'd been exhausted for 4 years. "I'm heading out," she told Michelle. Her assistant looked shocked. "It's only 5:30. "I know. I'll be available by phone if anything critical comes up, but otherwise I'm done for the day." "Oh, okay. Well, have a good evening, Ms. Vale." Sienna drove to Ethan's apartment without letting herself overthink it. She parked on the street, climbed the familiar stairs, and knocked on his door. Connor answered, still in his school clothes. "Sienna! Dad! Sienna's here!" Ethan appeared from the kitchen, surprise and pleasure crossing his face. "Hey, I wasn't expecting you. I left work at 5:30. Felt like I should do something with the extra time." "Good choice." He stepped aside. "Come in. We're about to start homework and then make dinner. Nothing exciting." "Exciting is overrated." She joined them at the table, helping Connor with his math, while Ethan prepped ingredients for stir-fry. It was domestic and ordinary, and exactly what she needed after the intensity of the morning. "How was school?" she asked Connor. "Good. We learned about the water cycle in science. Did you know that the water we drink is the same water that dinosaurs drank millions of years ago?" "That's pretty amazing, right? So technically I've had the same water as a T-Rex." "Technically," Ethan said from the kitchen, "that water's been filtered through a municipal water treatment system, so it's slightly cleaner than what the T-Rex drank." "Dad, you're ruining the magic." Sienna laughed and Connor grinned at her before returning to his math problems. She watched him work, methodical and focused, and thought about what it would mean to be part of this. Not just visiting occasionally, but actually being woven into their lives. The thought didn't terrify her the way it would have a week ago. After homework, after dinner, after Connor went to bed with minimal protest, Sienna and Ethan ended up on the couch with mugs of tea that had gone lukewarm while they talked. "I told Harrison I'd resign if the board didn't accept my conditions," she said. "How did he react?" "Better than expected. He's going to push it through. I think he was actually relieved I finally said something." "And how do you feel about it?" "Like I took the first real step toward having a life instead of just a career." She set down her mug. "But I'm scared too. What if I can't maintain the balance? What if I fail at the job or fail at having a personal life or fail at both? Then you'll fail and figure it out and try again. That's what everyone does. Everyone doesn't run a billion-dollar company." "No, but everyone deals with trying to balance what they have to do with what they want to do. You're just doing it with higher stakes." Sienna leaned against him, feeling his arm come around her shoulders. "I keep waiting for this to feel like a mistake. You and me, I mean. But it doesn't." "Good. Because it's not." "How do you know?" "Because when you're here, I'm not just going through motions anymore. I'm actually living." He paused. "And because Connor asked me this morning if you were his girlfriend." Sienna pulled back to look at him. "What did you tell him?" "That it was complicated and we were figuring it out, but that I liked you a lot and wanted you to be around." "And what did he say?" "He said good because he liked you a lot too, and also could we get pizza for dinner tomorrow?" She laughed. "Very 7-year-old logic. The best kind." Ethan tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "But he's right. This is good. You being here, us figuring this out. It's good. Even though it's messy and complicated and I have no idea what I'm doing. Especially because of that. The best things are always messy and complicated." She kissed him then, slow and careful, a promise of something she wasn't ready to name yet, but could feel taking shape between them. When they pulled apart, Ethan was smiling. "So what happens now?" he asked. "I don't know. I go back to work tomorrow, deal with whatever crisis has erupted, try to maintain these new boundaries I've set. And after work? Maybe I come back here, if that's okay. It's more than okay." They sat in the quiet apartment, and Sienna thought about how much had changed since Christmas Eve. She'd arrived at this door terrified and desperate, and she was leaving. No, not leaving. Staying. She was staying in a way she hadn't stayed anywhere in 4 years. The next 2 weeks were chaos in the way that major life changes always were. The board approved her proposal with minimal pushback, probably because Harrison had done groundwork behind the scenes. Michelle posted the COO position and started screening candidates. Sienna restructured her calendar, pushing back on weekend meetings and late-night calls that weren't genuine emergencies. Some executives grumbled. Some board members expressed concern. But nobody quit. Nobody threatened revolt. And the company continued operating just fine with her working 50 hours a week instead of 80. Marcus tracked down the black sedan to a rental agency, where it had been returned by someone using a fake ID. The trail went cold there, but the messages stopped. Either the stalker had gotten bored or scared off by the increased security. Sienna didn't particularly care which, as long as they stayed gone. She started seeing Ethan regularly, fitting into the spaces of his life with Connor. Dinner a few nights a week, helping with homework. Weekend mornings at the park where Connor could run around while they drank coffee and talked about everything and nothing. It wasn't perfect. She still worked too much sometimes, still struggled with letting go of control. Ethan still had moments where grief for Lisa would hit him sideways, and he'd go quiet for a while. Connor had a spectacular meltdown one Sunday about something completely inconsequential, and Sienna had no idea how to handle it. But they figured it out together, stumbling and adjusting and learning as they went. 3 weeks after Christmas, Sienna hired a COO. Her name was Patricia Chen, 52 years old, with 20 years of operational experience and a reputation for getting things done without drama. She started immediately, and within a week, Sienna's workload had noticeably decreased. "I can't believe I waited this long to do this," she told Ethan one evening. "Sometimes we need permission to make changes, even from ourselves." Deep wisdom from the project manager. "I contain multitudes." She threw a couch pillow at him, and Connor, watching from his position on the floor with his homework, giggled. "Are you guys going to get married?" he asked suddenly. Sienna and Ethan both froze. "Connor," Ethan said carefully, "that's a pretty big question. But are you? Because my friend Tyler's dad got married last year, and now Tyler has a stepmom, and she's pretty cool. So if you got married, Sienna would be my stepmom, right?" "That's..." Ethan looked at Sienna, clearly panicking. "That's not how this works." "Why not?" "Because marriage is complicated and requires a lot of thought and planning, and I'm not saying tomorrow. I'm just asking if it's going to happen eventually." Sienna found her voice. "Connor, your dad and I are still figuring things out. We like each other a lot, but we're taking it slow." "Why?" "Because slow is smart when it comes to big decisions." "Okay." Connor went back to his homework, apparently satisfied. After he went to bed, Sienna and Ethan sat in the kitchen with glasses of wine Sienna had brought over. "Sorry about that," Ethan said. "He doesn't have a filter." "It's okay. It's actually kind of nice that he's thinking about it." "Are you? Thinking about it?" Sienna took a drink of her wine. "Maybe. Distantly. In a this could be something real kind of way. Same, but also terrifying because what if we mess it up? Then we mess it up and deal with it. That's what you keep telling me about everything else." He smiled. "Using my own wisdom against me. I like it. I learned from the best." A month after Christmas, on a Saturday morning, Sienna woke up in Ethan's bed. She'd been staying over more often, keeping clothes in his closet and a toothbrush in his bathroom. Connor had adapted to the change with the resilience of childhood, accepting that Sienna was part of their routine now. She found Ethan in his kitchen making coffee, and he handed her a mug without a word. This was their routine now, too. Weekend mornings, quiet and slow, before Connor woke up demanding breakfast and attention. "I got an email from the board yesterday," she said. "Good or bad?" "Good, actually. They want to discuss expanding my role, giving me more autonomy on strategic decisions." "That's what you wanted, right?" "Yeah, but it's weird to actually get it. I spent so long fighting for respect that I don't quite know what to do now that I have it." "Enjoy it. Use it. Make the changes you've been wanting to make." "Like what?" "Like whatever you think is right for the company. You're smart and you care about the people who work there. Trust yourself." Sienna leaned against the counter, sipping her coffee. "I've been thinking about starting a mentorship program for young women in business who are trying to navigate male-dominated industries." "That's a great idea. My father never would have approved. He thought mentorship was a waste of time, that people should figure things out on their own." "Your father was brilliant at business and wrong about a lot of things. You're allowed to do it differently." She smiled. "I'm starting to realize that." Connor appeared in the doorway, hair sticking up in every direction. "Is it Pancake Day?" "Every Saturday is Pancake Day, buddy," Ethan said. "Can Sienna help?" "If she wants to." Sienna set down her coffee. "I've never made pancakes before." "Really?" Connor looked shocked. "How have you survived?" "Lots of takeout and protein smoothies." "That's so sad. Come on, I'll teach you." She spent the next hour learning to make pancakes under the instruction of a 7-year-old who took his breakfast very seriously. She burned the first 2, undercooked the third, and finally got the 4th one almost right. "Not bad," Connor said, examining it critically. "You're getting better." High praise from the expert. They ate pancakes at the small table, Connor talking non-stop about his plans for the day, which apparently involved building something elaborate with Legos and maybe going to the park if it didn't rain. Sienna's phone buzzed. A text from Michelle. "Emergency board call scheduled for Monday, 7 a.m. Harrison needs you there." She stared at the message, feeling the familiar tightness in her chest. Then she took a breath and typed back, "Tell Harrison I'm available at 9 a.m., not before. Personal commitment." "I can't move." The response came quickly. Are you sure? He said it was urgent. I'm sure. 9 a.m. or later. She set the phone down, and Ethan was watching her. Everything okay? Yeah, just setting a boundary. Good for you. Connor finished his pancakes and ran off to start his Lego project, leaving Sienna and Ethan at the table. I love you, she said suddenly. Ethan went still. What? I love you. I've been trying not to say it because it felt too soon or too complicated, but I do. I love you and Connor and this life we're building together, even though it's messy and uncertain and nothing like what I planned. He reached across the table, took her hand. I love you too. Have for a while now. Why didn't you say anything? Same reason you didn't. Scared of moving too fast, of saying it wrong, of all the ways this could fall apart. He squeezed her hand. But I'm tired of being scared. I want to be brave enough to just say it. So say it. I love you, Sienna Vale. I love the way you take everything seriously, even Connor's Pokemon explanations. I love that you're learning to set boundaries and stand up for yourself. I love that you burned pancakes this morning and didn't give up. She was crying, not sad tears, but the kind that came from being seen completely and loved anyway. I'm still going to mess this up sometimes, she said. I'm going to work too late and forget dinner plans and probably panic about commitment at some point. And I'm going to have days where I miss Lisa so much I can barely function. Days where I'm not sure I'm doing right by Connor. Days where I'm just surviving instead of living. So we'll mess it up together. Yeah, together. Connor appeared in the doorway. Are you guys being mushy? Because that's gross. Very mushy, Ethan confirmed. Can you be mushy later? I need help with my Lego spaceship. Sienna wiped her eyes and stood up. Show me the spaceship. The day unfolded the way Saturdays did now, full of small moments that added up to something bigger. Legos and lunch and a walk to the park where Connor made friends with a dog and begged for the 100th time to get one of their own. We'll think about it, Ethan said, the same thing he always said. You always say that, because I'm always thinking about it. That evening, after Connor was asleep, Sienna and Ethan sat on the couch scrolling through their phones. She was looking at potential COO candidates for a second-in-command under Patricia. He was looking at something for work. What would you think about meeting Barbara and Richard? Ethan asked suddenly. Connor's grandparents? Yeah, they've been asking about you. Connor can't stop talking about Dad's friend Sienna, and they're curious. Are you sure? That feels like a big step. It is a big step, but we've already taken a lot of big steps. What's one more? What if they don't like me? They'll like you. And if they don't, we'll deal with it. He set his phone down. But I think they will. Barbara's been telling me for a year that I need to start dating again, and Richard keeps saying Connor needs more people in his life who care about him. Okay, yeah, let's do it. They scheduled dinner for the following weekend at a restaurant Barbara suggested. Sienna was nervous in a way she hadn't been nervous about anything in years. Board meetings didn't faze her anymore. Investor calls were routine. But meeting her boyfriend's dead wife's parents felt impossibly high stakes. What if they think I'm trying to replace Lisa? She asked Ethan the night before. You're not trying to replace anyone. You're just being yourself. What if myself isn't enough? It's always been enough. For me, for Connor, it'll be enough for them too. The dinner was awkward at first, everyone too polite, trying too hard. But Connor was there, and his presence made everything easier. He talked about school and Pokemon and the spaceship he'd built, and slowly the adults relaxed into actual conversation. Barbara asked Sienna about her work, and Sienna found herself talking honestly about the challenges of running Vale Industries, about the changes she was making, about learning to set boundaries. It sounds like you're figuring it out, Barbara said. I'm trying. I've had good teachers. Sienna glanced at Ethan. He speaks very highly of you, Richard said. Says you've been good for him and Connor. They've been good for me too. Better than they probably realize. Later, after they'd said goodbye and Connor had fallen asleep in the car on the way home, Barbara pulled Sienna aside. I want to say something, and I hope you'll take it the right way. Sienna braced herself. Lisa was my daughter, and I loved her more than anything. Losing her nearly destroyed me. Barbara's voice was thick with emotion. But I see the way Ethan looks at you, and it's different than how he looked at her. Not better or worse, just different. And I see Connor light up when you're around. So I want you to know that you have my blessing. Whatever happens with you and Ethan, you have my support. Sienna felt tears burning. Thank you. That means more than you know. Just take care of them. That's all I ask. I will. I promise. 2 months after Christmas, Sienna stood in front of the full board presenting her vision for Vail Industries over the next 5 years. She talked about sustainable growth, about employee development programs, about the mentorship initiative she wanted to launch. Some board members asked hard questions. Some pushed back on the timeline or the budget. But nobody questioned her capability or her right to make these decisions. When the meeting ended, Harrison pulled her aside. "Your father would be proud," he said. "You told me that before. I'm telling you again because it's true. You've taken what he built and made it better. That's the real legacy." She walked out of that meeting and straight to her office, where Patricia was waiting with updates on 3 different projects. They worked through them efficiently, Patricia handling the details while Sienna focused on strategy. At 5:30, Sienna closed her laptop. "Heading out?" Patricia asked. "Yeah, I've got dinner plans." "With Ethan?" Sienna had told Patricia about her relationship early on, wanting to be transparent about where her time and attention were going outside work. "With Ethan and Connor, we're trying a new recipe." "What are you making?" "Homemade pizza. Connor's convinced he can make better pizza than the delivery place." Patricia laughed. "Good luck with that." Sienna drove to Ethan's apartment, using the key he'd given her 3 weeks earlier. Inside, Connor was already setting up the pizza-making station. Ingredients spread across the counter in organized chaos. "You're here," he said. "We got 3 different kinds of cheese. Very important for pizza quality." Ethan came out of the bedroom, and Sienna went to him automatically now, kissing him hello like it was the most natural thing in the world. "How was the board meeting?" he asked. "Good. Really good, actually. I presented the 5-year plan, and they approved it with minimal changes." "That's amazing. It feels amazing. Like I'm actually leading the company instead of just trying to survive it." They made pizza together, Connor taking his role as head chef very seriously, instructing both adults on proper cheese distribution and sauce application. The pizza came out slightly burned on one side and perfect on the other, and Connor declared it a victory. After dinner, after Connor's bath and bedtime routine, Sienna and Ethan ended up on the couch the way they always did. But tonight felt different, heavier with possibility. "I've been thinking," Ethan said. About us. About the future." He turned to face her. "I know we said we'd take things slow, but it's been almost 3 months, and I don't want slow anymore. I want you here all the time. I want to wake up next to you and make you bad coffee and argue about whose turn it is to do dishes." Sienna's heart was pounding. "Are you asking me to move in?" "Yeah, I am. I know this place is tiny, and you have a penthouse with a view and probably more square footage than this entire building, but yes." He stopped. "Yes? Yes, I'll move in. Not because the apartment is nice, it's objectively terrible in many ways, but because this is where you and Connor are, and that's where I want to be." "What about your penthouse?" "I'll sell it, or keep it as an office space. I don't know, but I know I don't want to live there alone anymore. I want to live here, with you and Connor, and whatever chaos that brings." Ethan kissed her, deep and certain, and Sienna felt something settle in her chest. This was right. Messy and complicated and nothing like what she'd planned for her life, but absolutely right. "Connor's going to lose his mind when we tell him," Ethan said. "Good loss of mind or bad?" "Definitely good. He's been asking when you're going to move in for weeks now." "Has he?" "Yeah, apparently all his friends have 2 parents, and he wants that too. In his mind, you moving in makes us a family." "And in your mind?" "Same thing. We've been a family for a while now. This just makes it official." Sienna moved in over the course of 2 weeks, bringing clothes and books, and the few personal items that actually mattered from her penthouse. Most of her expensive furniture went into storage. The art got donated. She kept the photo of her father and a few other meaningful things, but the rest was just stuff. The apartment was crowded with her things added to theirs, but they made it work. Connor helped her organize her closet space, very seriously explaining his system for where shoes should go. Ethan cleared out half his dresser and made room in the bathroom cabinet. It was domestic and ordinary and exactly what Sienna had been missing without realizing it. The board raised eyebrows when she updated her address in the company directory, but nobody said anything directly. Harrison sent a text. "Congratulations. Happiness looks good on you." She responded, "Thanks. It feels good too. 3 months after moving in, Sienna woke up to Connor jumping on the bed. It's Saturday, pancake day, and I get to show Sienna my report card because I got all A's. Connor, Ethan groaned. It's 7 a.m. So? Pancakes don't make themselves. Sienna laughed and pulled Connor down between them. Show me this report card, superstar. He produced it from somewhere. The kid had pockets in his pajamas, apparently, and she read through it. All A's, like he'd said, plus a note from his teacher. Connor has shown remarkable growth this year. He's more confident and engaged than ever. I'm so proud of you, she said. Thanks. Can we celebrate with extra chocolate chips in the pancakes? Absolutely. They made pancakes, Sienna now proficient enough that she only burned one. Connor ate 4 and declared it the best Saturday ever. After breakfast, while Ethan did dishes and Connor played with Legos, Sienna's phone rang. Michelle. On a Saturday. She almost didn't answer, then remembered that she'd told Michelle to only call on weekends for genuine emergencies. What's wrong? Sienna asked. Sienna. Nothing's wrong exactly, but there's a situation with the Singapore office that probably needs your input before Monday. Can it wait until this afternoon? I can video call around 2. That would work. Sorry to bother you on your weekend. It's okay. That's what emergencies are for. She hung up and Ethan was watching from the kitchen. Work? He asked. Minor crisis in Singapore. I'm going to handle it this afternoon. You okay with that? Yeah, it's actually important, not just someone panicking over nothing, and I can deal with it in an hour instead of letting it take over the whole weekend. Look at you setting boundaries. I learned from someone stubborn. Takes one to know one. Connor looked up from his Legos. Are you guys flirting? Because it's gross. Very gross, Sienna confirmed. The grossest. Whatever. Can we go to the park later? After I handle the work thing, yeah. They went to the park that afternoon, Connor running ahead while Sienna and Ethan walked hand in hand behind him. The work call had gone fine. She'd solved the problem in 45 minutes and closed her laptop without guilt. I have something to tell you, Ethan said as they walked. Good or bad? Good, I think. I got offered a promotion. Sienna stopped walking. That's amazing. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because it's complicated. The position is in Seattle. It's a huge opportunity, more money, better title, actual career advancement instead of just staying in the same role forever. Her stomach dropped. Seattle. Yeah. When would you have to decide? They want an answer in 2 weeks. They stood there in the park, watching Connor play on the swings, and Sienna's mind raced through implications. If Ethan took the job, they'd have to move. She'd have to leave Vail Industries or try to run it remotely, which was impossible. Connor would have to change schools, leave his friends. But this was Ethan's career, his opportunity. She couldn't ask him to turn it down. What do you want to do? She asked carefully. I don't know. A year ago, I would have said no immediately. Too much disruption for Connor, too risky. But now, he looked at her. Now I think maybe taking risks is okay. Maybe we've both played it safe for too long. You're asking me to move to Seattle. I'm asking what you think about moving to Seattle. Together. As a family. Sienna thought about Vail Industries, about the board, about the changes she'd been making. She thought about Patricia, who was more than capable of running day-to-day operations. She thought about her father's legacy and what he would have wanted for her. And she thought about Ethan and Connor and the life they'd built together in a tiny apartment with crooked Christmas trees and bad coffee. I think, she said slowly, that I've spent 4 years building a company and forgetting to build a life. And I think maybe it's time to prioritize differently. Are you saying yes to Seattle? I'm saying I want to explore it. Talk to the board about transitioning to a different role, maybe advisory instead of operational. See if we can make it work. Ethan pulled her close. You'd really do that? Leave the company for me? Not just for you, for us. For the chance to start fresh somewhere new, where I'm not the CEO 24/7 and you're not the widower trying to hold everything together. She looked up at him. What if we could just be people in Seattle? Regular people with regular jobs and a kid and a life. That sounds terrifying. And amazing. Yeah, amazing too. They told Connor that night and his reaction was immediate panic. But I can't leave. My friends are here. And my school. And what about my Legos? Your Legos come with us, Ethan said calmly. And you'll make new friends in Seattle. New school, new adventures. I don't want new adventures. I want things to stay the same. Sienna sat down next to him. I get that. Change is scary. But sometimes scary things turn out to be really good. Like what? Like when I showed up at your door on Christmas Eve. That was scary for me, but it turned out to be the best decision I've made in years. Connor considered this. Will we have a bigger apartment in Seattle? Probably, Ethan said. Big enough for a dog. Connor, I'm just asking, Sienna laughed. We can discuss the dog. No promises. Over the next 2 weeks, everything moved fast. Ethan accepted the Seattle position. Sienna met with the board and proposed transitioning to a board advisor role, maintaining strategic involvement while Patricia stepped up to CEO. There was resistance, surprise, but ultimately acceptance. You've earned the right to make this choice, Harrison told her. And honestly, Patricia's ready. You've trained her well. My father would hate this decision. Your father made a lot of choices he regretted. Don't let his mistakes become yours. They put the apartment on the market, started looking at places in Seattle. Connor gradually warmed to the idea, especially after they found a house with a yard big enough for the dog he'd been promised as a moving bribe. 4 months after Ethan got the offer, they moved. The day they left, Sienna stood in the empty apartment one last time, remembering Christmas Eve when she'd knocked on this door terrified and desperate. You okay? Ethan asked from the doorway. Yeah, just thinking about how much has changed. Good changes? The best changes. They drove to Seattle with Connor asleep in the back seat and their entire life packed into a moving truck following behind. Sienna had sold the penthouse, donated most of her expensive clothes, and quit being CEO of Vail Industries. On paper, it looked like she'd lost everything. In reality, she'd gained a life. The house in Seattle was bigger than the apartment, with actual bedrooms and a yard and space for all of them to exist without constantly bumping into each other. Connor picked out paint colors for his room, Ethan set up his home office, and Sienna, for the first time in years, set up a space that was just for her. Not for work, not for productivity, just for being. She filled it with books she actually wanted to read. A comfortable chair, photos of her and Ethan and Connor. On the wall, she hung the 12 pages she'd written on Christmas night, framed as a reminder of what happened when you finally told yourself the truth. 2 months after the move, Sienna was sitting in her space reading when Connor appeared in the doorway. Can I ask you something? He said. Always. Are you going to marry my dad? She set down her book. We've talked about it. Why? Because Taylor at school said that if you're going to be my mom, you should be married to my dad. That's how it works. I'm not trying to be your mom, Connor. You had a mom, and she loved you very much. I know. But she's gone, and you're here. So can you be like a different kind of mom? Not a replacement, but a new one? Sienna felt her throat tighten. I would love that, if you're okay with it. I'm okay with it. You make good pancakes now, and you help with homework, and you don't get mad when I'm loud. He paused. Plus, Dad's happier when you're around. I'm happier when I'm around, too. So you'll marry him? If he asks, yeah. Good. Because I already told Taylor you were getting married, and I don't want to be a liar. She laughed and pulled him into a hug. We'll work on it. That night, after Connor was asleep, she told Ethan about the conversation. He's not subtle, is he? Ethan said. Not even a little bit. For what it's worth, I was planning to ask. I just wanted to wait until we were settled. Are we settled? Settled enough. He got up, went to the bedroom, and came back with a small box. Sienna's heart started pounding. I bought this 2 months ago, Ethan said, sitting back down next to her. Right after we decided to move. Because I knew that wherever we ended up, I wanted us to be a family. Officially. He opened the box. Inside was a simple ring, elegant without being showy. Sienna Vale, will you marry me? Will you keep making terrible pancakes and helping Connor with homework and calling me out when I'm being stubborn? Will you build a life with us that's messy and imperfect and real? Yes, she said, crying and laughing at the same time. Yes to all of it. He slipped the ring on her finger, and it fit perfectly. They sat there on their couch in their new house in Seattle, and Sienna thought about the journey that had brought them here. From that terrified knock on Christmas Eve to this moment, choosing love and life and possibility over fear. They got married 6 months later in a small ceremony with Barbara and Richard, a few close friends, and Connor as the ring bearer who took his job very seriously. Sienna wore a simple dress, nothing like the elaborate gown she would have chosen 4 years ago. Ethan wore a suit Connor had helped pick out. When they exchanged vows, Sienna promised to keep showing up, keep being honest, keep choosing them every day. Ethan promised the same, and Connor, when asked if he accepted Sienna into their family, said obviously, loud enough that everyone laughed. At the reception, Harrison pulled Sienna aside. "Your father would be proud," he said for the third time. "You keep saying that, because it keeps being true. You took what he built and made it yours. And then you had the courage to walk away when it was time." He raised his glass. "To knowing when to hold on and when to let go." "To letting go," Sienna echoed. A year after they moved to Seattle, Sienna sat in her reading space working on a book. Not a business book, not a how-to guide, but a memoir about grief and transformation and learning to rebuild your life from scratch. Patricia sent regular updates from Vail Industries, which continued to thrive under her leadership. Sienna consulted occasionally, sat in on board meetings remotely, but mostly she'd let go of the company that had defined her for so long. Connor was thriving in his new school, making friends, playing soccer, and still convinced he was going to be a veterinarian when he grew up. The dog they'd adopted, a mutt named Rocket, followed him everywhere, and Ethan had settled into his new role, challenged and engaged in a way he hadn't been in years. They were happy, not perfect, not without struggles, but genuinely happy in a way none of them had been before. On a random Tuesday evening, Sienna was cooking dinner when her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I saw your interview in Fortune. Congratulations on the book deal. You look happy." She stared at the message, heart racing. The messages had stopped for over a year, and she'd assumed whoever had been stalking her had moved on. But here it was again, that familiar intrusion into her life. She showed Ethan the message. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "Nothing. They can send all the messages they want. They don't have power over me anymore." "You're sure?" "I'm sure." That person was threatening someone who was scared and alone and desperate to maintain control. That's not me anymore. She deleted the message. "I'm not that person, and I'm not going back to being her." "I love you," Ethan said. "I love you too." Connor came running in, Rocket at his heels. "Dinner ready? I'm starving." "Almost. Set the table?" "Fine, but I'm picking the movie tonight." "Deal." They ate dinner together, the three of them plus the dog begging under the table. They watched Connor's movie choice, something with too much CGI and not enough plot. They did the bedtime routine, the dishes, all the ordinary tasks that added up to a life. And later, lying in bed next to Ethan with moonlight streaming through the window, Sienna thought about Christmas Eve over a year ago, about showing up at a stranger's door terrified and desperate, about everything that had come after. She'd lost a company, lost the identity she'd built around being CEO, around being her father's daughter, around being powerful and untouchable. But she'd gained a family, gained the ability to breathe without permission, to make choices based on what she wanted instead of what she should want, to be human instead of perfect. And that trade, messy and complicated as it was, had saved her life. "You still awake?" Ethan whispered. "Yeah." "What are you thinking about?" "About how grateful I am that I knocked on your door that night. Best Christmas Eve ever." "The best," she agreed. They fell asleep like that, hands linked under the covers. And in the morning, there would be pancakes and chaos and a dog who needed walking and a kid who had opinions about everything. There would be work calls and school projects and disagreements about whose turn it was to do laundry. There would be hard days and grief that still surfaced when they least expected it and fears about whether they were doing any of this right. But there would also be laughter and love and the quiet certainty that they'd found each other exactly when they needed to. That sometimes falling apart was the beginning of coming together. That the messiest, most imperfect things were often the most real. And in the end, real was all that mattered.